Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Survivor Stockwatch podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me this week, I have a very special guest. Shannon is with me. Hello, Shannon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Survivor 42 for Survivor Global. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here to talk about an incredible episode 3 of Survivor 42. We got so lucky with the strategy this week, and with me to talk about it, I have an amazing guest. I have the incredible Taran Armstrong for the first RHAP Survivor Global Stockwatch crossover spectacular. Taran, thank you for being here.
I can't believe you did this to me, Shannon. I feel so betrayed. You set me up. I thought I was doing the intro, and you just did this to me. That's it. I'm keeping Lydia.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What was a bigger betrayal? Daniel throwing Chanel under the bus, or you giving me my choice of draft picks so that I wrestled with it for a month? And I think yours is worse.
Man, what one kind act has lived in your head rent free?
Was it kind? Just tell me if it was kind. Were you trying to be kind? Was that it? Just let me know.
How many times have I told you? It was genuine kindness.
Was it? Okay, I'll try believe you because look, whatever the methods, it's been going great. My draft team, I couldn't be happier right now. I mean, Omar, feeling great about having got Omar. Romeo and Lindsay, I'm in a great spot. Everyone's doing
pretty
amazing.
Well.
Yeah, and you were too.
I was feeling real good last week.
Yeah. Well, I had a joke for this podcast, and it was like, our first 2 draft picks walk into Shipwheel Island, and then the punchline is the next 20 minutes of the episode. So that was Chanel and Omar between the two of us.
Yeah. Well, if you're a little confused, there was no glitch at the beginning of this podcast. We are doing a crossover episode, as Shannon said. This is the Stockwatch podcast and Survivor Global. We're coming together. It's like that time on TV when 2 shows came together and did a thing.
Yes, exactly. That's what I said to Taran. I'm like, here's the idea, which was Sam Moore's idea, credit where it's due. But I was like, like when I was a kid, like I remember the hype. It was before I was born, but I remember the hype of watching like the Flintstones meets the Jetsons. I remember that like Friends and Mad About You did a crossover, and I was telling you that like Brooklyn Nine-Nine did a crossover with New Girl. I didn't even watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And then once it crossed over with New Girl, I was like, this looks so funny. In 2 weeks, I binged all of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And then I preferred Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I thought, that would be a great idea, but I don't want my listeners to prefer you. I'm happy for them to listen to you. And like, if anyone hasn't listened to Taran before and isn't a Big Brother person, they're like, oh, Taran's great, and listen, but don't prefer you over me, because then I'm going to get territorial.
Well, here's the thing. I think that anytime we've come together to do a Survivor podcast, it's always magical. I think that, together...
together we make like the perfect human.
Yeah.
Yeah, except that like they're a meat shield and a brain shield, and we're just 2 Survivor strategy robots who are kind of the same and don't really have complementary skills, but we'll just add. And we're lucky in that way that this episode was so strategic, because this is like our bread and butter.
Look, 2 of a great thing is an amazing thing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping, right? I mean, like, I feel that we manifested something based on... A 2-1-1 was mentioned. We once did a podcast on plurality votes with a big 2-1-1 section. Like all the strategy and the decision making, not a lot of good strategy, but like I feel we manifested, definitely for me, the best episode of the season, and like such a strategic episode.
Yes, I think we did. I think this was us for sure. Let's talk about the episode.
Yes.
This is the format of this podcast is that it's two podcasts meshed into one. So we're just gonna wing it. We're gonna go for it.
We're doing.
My podcast, the Stockwatch, we go through the players, we rate them. I also, for Survivor, kind of rank them because sometimes the ratings are very meaningless when you don't even see an entire tribe for the entire episode. So we'll be doing that, and then we'll also be doing all of Shannon's fun things, including the Chissy points,
the
Chizzy points. That's what I meant to say.
The first hurdle. Yeah, Taran's got the theme song ready to go. So the Chizzy ranks players in its own way. We're going to be doing a lot of ranking in this episode. A lot of like numerically defining the players. And we're going to, but your podcast as well, you go through it play by play. In mine, we discuss the strategy play by play. Our podcasts are not dissimilar. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yes. Yeah. So let's get into it. So I've kind of, shied away from the full recaps this season so far. I've been enjoying that, but what I do like to do is just run through some of my favorite moments. I was really excited about the Tocantins moment. I'm sure it's been discussed to death at this point, but when Marianne says that
I've watched every season except for 6 episodes of Tocantins.
It really just, I feel like that's just one of my favorite things spoken in a Survivor episode. It's so, like, they've gone very meta ever since, Survivor drop the 4, keep the 1. And this is one of the more meta lines I think we've heard on the show.
I know, assuming that the audience even knows or remembers what Tocantins is. That's a super fan call out because most fans probably don't. But I was wondering, like, what, because she said it was the last 6 episodes because she was like going out to play and she didn't finish it with her mom. Like, what secrets of Survivor has she missed? Like, what crucial secrets has she missed in those 6 episodes? Like, there was some strategy there. Like, Steven waited too long to get rid of JT, so hopefully, like, she doesn't. And also, like, Omar and Jonathan are not like a Steven JT pairing, so maybe she's like less aware of that. But I don't know. That's there the whole season. I just hope that it's not that crucial nugget of information missing that ruins her game.
I mean, the fact that she's missing even just 1 episode of Tyson is just really a shame. So I think that's the biggest issue.
I think she's going to go back and watch it. I think that's her intention. Like, she's not going to know. She just ran out of time.
If you haven't seen all the Tyson episodes, like, how well are you really going to do on the show? You know what I mean?
She's not even a super fan. Like, 6 whole episodes missed. I love to gatekeep. That's the thing that I do.
Yeah. Man, I can't believe it. Six whole episodes, unbelievable. She's gonna find the beware advantage in this episode, and we're gonna get our third and final phrase here, or not the third and final phrase. This is the it's this.
Well, it is the third.
Phrase?
It's the second phrase, but we know that there's one about potatoes to come from a
right
mystery voice, a mystery female voice.
I have skin. Am I a potato?
Whose voice is that?
Questions abound.
Who's that pokey voice? The third phrase is...
It's another classic case of the bunny rabbit having dinner in the mailbox.
Who comes up with these?
Jeff.
Is it Jeff? I think it's really funny if it is Jeff, because it makes it all the more interesting when she gets to the challenge and she says,
it kind of reminds me of the classic tale of the bunny rabbit eating its dinner in the mailbox. You know that one?
I don't.
And then he says, tell me more. What is it? And she says,
so like you see like your mailbox and you open and there's like a bunny rabbit and you're like, what's this bunny rabbit doing here? You know? It's like you don't know the whole story unless you're the bunny.
All right.
All right. Okay. Okay. Anyway, Marianne, that's not the craziest thing she said on the mat this season yet. So it's par for the course. Be a little weird. That strategy is playing out. I want to say, as an immigrant, she should have made this a Kenyan thing. Like, there's so many things that I could say to my husband, like, oh, it's like the classic tale of the bunny rabbit in the mailbox. He'd be like, what? And I'd be like, oh, that must be a South African thing. Sorry. Like, you guys don't have that fable. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a good show. I feel like if I'm ranking the uses of the phrases in challenge situations, this is not as bad as Brad, but I would say it's definitely up there in terms of worst explanations for the weird phrase.
But I feel like so little of it is on the phrase. It's just who you purport yourself to be generally. Like with Xander, no one thought about it because they're like, yeah, that's Xander. With Marianne as well, she has gone on for a long time about the Zach thing. Like, is anyone really questioning anything Marianne does? Like, she could come out and say anything. Like, I think that's the key to it.
Yeah, but at least the Zach thing was coherent. Like, she had a point. There's a beginning, a middle, and an
There's
end.
A point to this. Do you not understand the fable? If you're outside of the mailbox,
bunny rabbit, and you don't know the whole story unless you're the bunny.
Yeah, so if you're outside of the mailbox, you don't understand, you're not seeing everything that's happening, whereas the bunny rabbit in the mailbox has the full picture of the mailbox. Do you understand that?
Is this like a bunny rabbit version of Plato's Cave? Where like the bunny rabbit's been inside the mailbox the whole time?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know that I go that far, but I think I'm trying to think about what there's a message for sure. The message is just like, don't judge until you've walked around someone's shoes or in someone's mailbox, into a bunny's mailbox.
I guess so.
It's actually quite beautiful.
You know, Marianne has had some great moments so far that I've enjoyed, like, and she's gonna have another good one here when I believe this is when she finds it.
Oh my gosh.
She's a wicked fan.
She's a big fan of the shiz.
Yeah.
She loves the shiz.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
like
Marianne was doing a lot in this episode. I mean, she always is, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, most of it involved finding the thing, but
no, but she also told them all that she had an extra vote, and then she told them all that she lost her vote. I feel like it's like that whiplash for the rest of the trial must have been crazy. It's like, hey, remember everything I said about my vote? Forget everything you knew because it's now completely redundant.
Yeah, and I did search the secret scenes, and I'm not like I feel like maybe there were more that I couldn't find, but because I wanted anything from Ika this episode.
There was no secret scene from Ika.
Not
so
a
there's
single...
one on at Shipwheel. There's one from Vati. There's one from Taku. Ika even purpled in the secret scenes. Literally, just that what this one out.
I think in Survivor Stockwatch history hasn't happened, so we're gonna have to deal with the fact that there's literally nothing to update on their position. But in the secret scene for this tribe, we had Marianne saying like, "We can't lose because we're so tight, and I don't want to lose anyone."
Yeah.
Obviously, the implication being that she does not feel like she would necessarily be the person to go, and also that they're super tight, and that that at the very least they've made her feel like they're super tight. This feels like probably the closest tribe, like bonded together that we have of all three tribes for sure.
Yeah, like everything we got from these camp scenes and the secret scene made me feel better for Marianne, because we even have stuff from Lindsay saying like we're a tight four, and I feel like that clarified some of the dynamics last week when it seemed like a 50-50 toss up in the edit, but maybe it was more of a 4 than a 3-1-1. Maybe that 3 still is tighter, but it's still more of a 4, and that's definitely the way that they're going about it. So in terms of her giving all of the information, I think there's actually merit there, because that extra vote, I mean, actually on the revote, it wouldn't work out if they were voting for her. Omar's lost a vote, so an extra vote could be powerful. She ends up losing the vote. The classic modern Survivor that she had the extra vote for about 5 seconds before losing all of it. But there could be merit there because it's way more powerful for them as a group. And maybe in some version of this, which I don't think is true of these dynamics, but maybe in some version they're like, well, we can go to a merge with Marianne's 2 votes rather than like Lindsay's 1 vote. I still think Lindsay's closer, but there could be that. So I see the merit there, but I don't know if Marianne knows how on the bottom of the 4 she was, or that she is true. Like she knew she was a decoy last week, but maybe thinks it's coming from Mariah. So I think that maybe there's a little bit of lack of clarity for her in making those decisions, but I still think there's like objective merit to those decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Really, the only other thing before we get to the whole sort of strategy portion of the episode is this big challenge, which, you know, I've never been much of a challenge guy in terms of like watching them. Big Brother has been killing me lately with these. That Big Brother has like 20 to 30 minutes of challenge per episode at this point. But this one was pretty compelling because it was so ridiculously dangerous.
Yeah.
There was a scene. There was a short shot of Roxroy like under the ladder, like screaming for help that like choked me up. I was like, oh my God, like this is terrible. But Jeff is loving it.
Jonathan is carrying the ladder on his shoulder, and that ladder is no joke.
Carrying his family on his back.
Definitely evocative of that. Yeah. Well, there's another one.
First he gets the ladder, now he's grabbing Omer.
I'm so shocked that Jeff likes Jonathan. I think Jeff should come over to Survivor South Africa. We had a player act as a lifeguard through a similarly scary challenge like this and like help people across.
I mean, that's he was doing for his own tribe. Yeah, they were calling in the other people. I was like, just call Jonathan back in. Yeah, he's got it.
Like, why isn't he diving back out for them? I mean, yeah, Jeff would love chappies for sure. But Australian Survivor has a lot of drowning challenges. Once drowned a tsunami survivor in a proud moment for the show, but it's all very like mental drowning. Like it's that challenge where they're under kind of the crates And then there's some other variations of that. But it's always like, well, you can get out if you want. This made me uncomfortable because I was like, they could conceivably die. And I don't like that.
Yeah, it definitely felt like it went on a bit longer than I think maybe it should have. But ultimately, it's called for the two tribes still struggling, and they're gonna then just go straight to the tossing the the bags up onto the platform portion of the challenge, where of course Ika is gonna squeeze out the win, which means that we're gonna see our first chance of seeing, what was it, Vati,
yeah.
Vati over going to tribal. But Jeff has one more thing to say before he sends them all away. He says this.
And I gotta say, Jonathan, I've seen a lot of challenges. I've rarely seen an individual performance like that. Nice job.
Wow.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Why do you think he was under the radar?
Single me out, eh?
I think it's done for Jonathan at this point. Like, not just this in this challenge, but also just like looking at the entire cast. Like, I don't know that he's, really thinking so much about trying to shrink in the eyes of everyone else. Like, it's done.
I think that's very true, but I do think there's a difference between like performing really well, especially when the other tribes are like super busy, like trying to survive and probably don't see how like
Just
well Jonathan
busy
is doing.
Staying alive.
Yeah.
To
then
that.
Jeff being like, that's after 20 plus years, one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, Jonathan. I think that makes an impression.
I actually agree. And I think that like, it's not just how well he did in the challenge. People start to notice like Jeff's pets. And I think Evie was talking about this last week, and like they don't like that either. Like Jeff should be more neutral on that probably, even though it's so self-evident that he would love Jonathan in this.
Yeah, like Jonathan should get back to camp, open up his bag, find a note, and be like, oh my God, did I get an advantage? He opens up the note and it just says,
you did great.
You were amazing in the challenge, heart Jeff.
Yeah. Wow. I would love that. If it's just leaving little notes, would be like, didn't want to say this in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Didn't want to like call it. Like he should be reacting to everything the way he reacted to the bunny in the mailbox. Like, all right. But then his secret feelings show up in your bag and he's like, hey, it's not an advantage. Just wanted you to know. Seamless phrase delivering, or like, wow, like great job in the challenge. Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of neutralize Jeff a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like Daniel is also somebody that could have learned from that method. Maybe just wait until after things happen and you can talk with people privately. But maybe we shouldn't be surprised that Daniel takes after Jeff after he said this.
I like this twist. This is a fun.
Yeah, great, but it's on. This was a Jeff Krause had a good idea, sir.
Jeff
coming back to
ideas.
His bag. Yeah, when he comes back to his bag, it says, I really like what you said about me having good ideas. Thanks, Daniel. See you at the challenge. Like that's what he's doing with all of the players. This is a great idea.
Yes. So Vati is heading to tribal, and that means that we're gonna get some strategy from them. We've set up the tribe where it seems like there's 3 pairs of 2. I don't know how many other numbers can fit in a pair, but we have 3 pairs on the tribe. It seems that's how it's been set up. And Mike has lost his vote because he found the beware advantage, and he has to say that
there is such grace in a game of soccer.
Grace in a game of soccer, which means that they've only got 3 votes if they combine the Mike Jenny faction with the Chanel Daniel faction. And there's one complication here, which is that Chanel is going to be sent to Shipwheel Island with Omer, and I will say. For the Shannon listeners out there, I'm a huge Chanel stan. I came, if you watch the draft, Chanel was my number 1 pick on the board. I was really happy last episode. I was like, all right, let's go. Heading to Shipwheel Island, making those connections. And then they cut straight to a confessional where she says, hey, I'm making connections. And I was like, oh, so in sync. We got this. I was excited.
Yeah, I mean, this is when, okay, if you imagine Daniel and Chanel at the top of Shipwheel Island, just imagine the 2 of them, because that's their game at the beginning of the episode and through the episode. They have so much capital. They have each other, strong pair. They have every single person in the tribe wanting to work with them. They have all the information of the advantages which obviously isn't true of everyone in the tribe and becomes true of no one except them in the tribe with Chanel and risking her vote. They have the opportunity to go to Shipwheel Island, which protects against other people going to Shipwheel Island, trying to get something out of it that can work possibly against them or allies that they want to work with. They have everything. And by the end, they've tumbled down that summit, that massive hill, to have not even a majority, not even each other, and Chanel doesn't even have her own vote. So how did we get there? I think that's what we're going to have to pass out between the two of us, because step after step, there were so many outs. As they were tumbling, they could have been, oh, here's a door. I can leave. So many options, so many ways. Even after bad decision after bad decision, there were outs. And they kept on tumbling. So that's what we're going to have to talk through.
Yeah.
Because I'm not quite sure how possibly they could lose so much in the space of one afternoon and night.
It was like the reverse Sisyphus. Like they found themselves at the top and then they just had to like keep pushing it down. Maybe that means they'll just spring back up to the top again. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
But
I think they're gonna be climbing. Like if you saw that secret scene of how hard, I mean, we've seen them climb the summit like 1,000 times, and it's always really fun. But that's basically that just gets a breeze compared to the climb they have back to the top, I think.
Well, the thing that's confusing about this is that Chanel and Omar, they meet there at Shipwheel Island. They have a conversation that feels like they're on the same page. Chanel even says, like, I need my vote. But then she's saying, like, if there's a way for both of us to get it, I feel like that's the way forward.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit confused as to how much information they have on how this works, because they seem to have some idea of how it worked. But clearly they either thought that it would be different this time. Although, you know what? Last season, when they started doing this, I did think it would be a different thing every time, to be fair to them. And then when it was the same thing, I was like, really? It's the same exact thing? We're doing this again?
They wouldn't be that lazy. But they
yeah.
yeah.
So I guess that's a fair assumption to make. But Chanel is ultimately going to make a choice here that is, immediately going to spark some controversy, which is that she takes the risk. After admitting that she's in the more vulnerable position, she's going to tribal this episode. She said she needed her vote, and she goes and risks it anyway after basically incentivizing Omar to also take the risk.
I have so much on this. I mean, when I watched it, I literally yelled, no, when she risked her vote. There were so many things. The first being that some of like how we gamed out Shipwheel Island last season, and in criticisms that I had of Shipwheel Island was like, it's boring for a couple of reasons. The first being that, like, unlike a real prisoner's dilemma, the Shipwheel Island dilemma gives you an out that Jenny took, for example, where you can go back and protect your vote and you assure yourself something. In a prisoner's dilemma, you have to read the other person because everything they do will affect the outcome for you. This isn't true of Shipwheel Island. You can save your vote. Doesn't matter what Omar did. You are going back with your vote. So if she really needs her vote, she's got it. She doesn't have to risk anything. So that out was something that I criticized of the dilemma. It made it like a different thing that we could work through strategically, which we did. But also it just gave just a little bit of an easier thing to do, which she could have taken. The other thing is that once someone is gone, and Jenny has said that she came back with full information, Marianne got the extra vote and told them about it. So you would think there's a lot of information. Even if you're assuming it might be different, you think you would talk through, but what if it's the same? Okay, what if it's like a two-person version of what we know? Like we'll talk through that, and then we'll talk through vaguer other options in case they weren't lazy. But once we know it's the same dilemma, same prize. It's not even like when Shannon and Liana went and it was something different. It's for an extra vote. You know exactly what's on the table. It became extremely easy to not be a dilemma, but really a very easy negotiation where both people stand to gain. So if you're the desperate person, the Evie, the Shan, the Chanel, who's going to tribal council and needs their vote, then what you stand to gain is that you offer the extra vote to the other person, you protect your vote, you take that out, you come back, and you've given that social capital. Hopefully that plays out down the line, which it has and hasn't. But I think everyone, like, Deshawn and Evie wanted to do it. Shannon and Liana obviously did create something important. Like, you get that. The other person receives that and also, gets an extra vote. So they both stand to gain in a very, very easy, I would say, negotiation. It took so much butchering of that simple strategy for Shipwheel Island to become so interesting because the mechanism incentivizes it not to be interesting. Like, take the out, negotiate, but they still don't. And it's that flaw which makes it fascinating. But that has to be on Chanel, actually, not the mechanism itself.
Yeah, it's a very strange decision for multiple reasons. Obviously, the primary one being Chanel loses her vote.
She really
And
needed that vote. Like,
she's in a spot where she needed the
crucially
vote.
so. Yeah.
Now, at this point in the episode, if I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, I could say, well, they're positioned in the middle of their tribe, and basically Chanel could be in a spot right now where she's going, you know what? Either I get an extra vote or I lose my vote. And if I get an extra vote, that means I side with Mike and Jenny. And if I lose my vote, that means I side with Lydia and Hai. I have the choice either way, and I could go either way. So I might as well just risk my vote, hope I get something out of it. And if not, I'll just go in a different direction on my tribe. Now, I still, even if you take that approach, which is obviously not the approach she took, I still don't like it, because what does this do with her relationship, her newfound connection with Omer, who is at some point going to realize, hey, she also risked her vote? What the hell? Yeah. I thought she said she needed it. What is she doing? This is not conducive to a working relationship.
Yeah. Well, Omar reads what she should do optimally. And this is something I always go back to Richard hashing this, because I remember he did a podcast with Rob where he was like, good players read optimal play from other people. But better players read even suboptimal play from other people, because no one is like a survivor robot who does the perfect thing. So Omar, like, who can blame him for thinking that? I mean, things she said, she's literally like, oh, she's like, we'll both try to gain. I'm like, well, that's not really what a dilemma is, but this negotiation will actually get you pretty close to that. But okay, we'll both try to gain. So something confusing is going on. And Omar does seem a little bit surprised when he like sees the note. But she does say, if we both can't gain, we'll play it safe. Or, so, and then they both can't gain. And she's like, well, he's trying to look out for me and he knows that I need it. It's like, no, he knows you need your vote, which you can protect. You don't need an extra vote tonight or for the future. So why should he give you that now? Like, he wants you to be okay tonight and you can make you okay tonight. Like, that's not on him. So in a lot of the conversations, and I know we don't see all of it, but it is super confusing how it could come to this. And honestly, for Chanel, if it's a fraction of 1% that this could go poorly, it's absolutely not worth it. And even if it goes well, that's the thing. And that's something that I've noticed and something we said last season. But like, you see Dre in the first episode, she gets the extra vote and she's still like, but I don't know if I have my vote. So I have less like strategizing power. I have less kind of capital to pull people to her plan of rocks right at the time. Marianne last week was like, I don't even know if I have my vote. She gets it. She gets the extra vote, but she doesn't know if she has it. And even in that, before Chanel finds out that she's lost her vote, she's still paranoid enough to put off Hai. I think she's still very defensive with Mike. She kind of like snaps at him about, well, I got you, like, you don't have to think it. And he's like, I know. But even in the way that changes her outlook and her approach, to me, that's still not worth it, because you're in a tiny little tribe. Your vote means more than ever, the first vote ever, and you're a crucial swing vote. It wasn't even worth the question mark of having it for me. And then there's the Omar side of the fact that you just made him lose a vote against anything he was doing. No fault there for him, obviously.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's just an extra vote. Like, it's pretty situational. Most of the time, it's in fact, I think there are very few times in Survivor history where the extra vote has actually made a difference. It's usually used as insurance. And usually the insurance wasn't even necessary. So it's like, it's really not worth the risk here. Now, I do like to point out as often as possible that Survivor is an edited show. And sometimes when people make seemingly baffling decisions, it's because we didn't see everything. And maybe there was more to the conversation that really made Chanel think that Omer would not take the thing. I like
That's very kind. That's very kind.
Look, these things happen. But obviously based on what we are shown here, and some of the things that were said out loud, it's hard to imagine what could have been said to lead in that direction. And I think ultimately, like, it's a baffling decision either way.
It's hard to think how anything could incentivize giving up, like risking that vote. And we'll talk about like the other options that it presented, but they're not even, again, options that were taken. So that's not an approach, that obviously they were going with. Chanel comes off the boat, and I think she's a little panicked about the way this might have gone, even by the risk of not having her vote, and goes with like a shaky plan on that. And something that she said is, she's like, I'm basically like, I'm not here to play scared. can I advocate for fear for a second? Can I advocate as a scared person? I'm scared of a lot of things. I'm scared of ants. I'm scared of butterflies. They're like dead relatives saying hi. That grosses me out. Fear is good. Fear is good. Don't ever make a decision on Survivor because you want to play big or you don't want to play scared. That's illogical and it's emotional, and conservative choices are super valid. And as someone said on Twitter when I tweeted about this, being scared that you'll regret it, so you have to make the big play, is just another type of fear. Like, there's no win for playing the bigger game, for playing the less scared game. Often what fear is logic. Like, you're a little scared right now because losing your vote, which is a crucial swing vote, is a very scary place to be. That fear is right. It's like the fear when you're in the water drowning, like, you should be scared right now. That's like your fight or flight response. Like, your body has like evolved to be at that point. So yes, be scared and play scared when scared is actually smart and makes you do something rational and logical. Marianne said it as well with the whale. I'm not here to play like a fearful game. And then she felt like she got bait and switched. Sometimes fear is good, and I will always advocate for that.
I'm gonna go one extra step on you here. I'm gonna go meta on the fear. I'm gonna say that fear is bad, but fear of fear is bad. Right? It's because it's the fear of playing by fear probably that causes Chanel to be like, I can't play scared because she's scared of playing scared.
Yeah, now you're actually more scared.
Exactly. And because like at the end of the day, like, yes, of course, like if the fear response is the rational one, then you should probably do that. But what that really means is just like you should do the rational response regardless of whether it's fearful or not, right? Just do it when it matches up with the rational response and don't do it when it doesn't. And so I think, if you're fearful of a situation, or if you have any kind of like strong emotion leading to a situation, it's always worth examining where that's coming from. And trying to figure out like, is this rational fear or is this irrational fear? And what should I do about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the family of like, I'm here to play, which is a super pet peeve of mine because everything is playing, like even playing small or subtle is like also playing, and especially if it's conscious and active. It's part of the big move zero of Survivor, right? That Jeff has been pushing for so many seasons, and they did have, to wait for years because of COVID, and they're there to play. And I get parts of that. Like I get, for example, like putting all the blood on him, for example. Like that's like, okay, well, I'm here to play and have fun, but like with little consequences. Whereas like making a crucial decision like this and even uttering that it could be about fear or playing big is just not something that I'll ever endorse. And like in the last season of Survivor South Africa, the mechanism was you go to an external island and you could like stay and play like a game or challenge for an advantage or disadvantage. Or you could go back to tribal council and kind of give up that opportunity. And a lot of people who stayed were like, well, because I'm here to play. And it was like, well, firstly, going back to tribal council, some might argue is more playing Survivor. And also, both of those things are like playing within the construct of this theme. But so many times it was like, well, I'm here to play. And it's like, no, do the thing that's right for your game. Like make the logical decision on moving forward with your game. Not about like, because yeah, everything is playing. If you're in Survivor making a decision, you're playing the game. But are you playing it well? Like, that's the question.
If you're basing any strategic decision on a mantra, you're probably in a bad place.
No, unless it's about the bunny rabbit. And we have to remember.
You know what? Yeah.
You have the whole story unless you're in the mailbox. It's kind of like what we're doing now. We're not in the mailbox of Survivor. We're having to read it. So that's the qualification, obviously, that we're not there and we don't know everything because we're not in the mailbox with the bunnies. So maybe that's what it's about.
That is what it's about. Beautiful. Last week, Daniel had such a great episode. I was feeling very good about Daniel. I had him at the top of his tribe. Mike had shared this information with him. It seemed like he and Chanel were positioned in the middle of the tribe, which they were. And it felt like, oh, well, look at his social game. Look at what's happening. Look at clumsy Mike forgetting where he put the idol. And in the preview, it's like, oh, he forgot where it is again. He loses the idol again. This episode, we're going to learn the truth.
Daniel can get a little squirrely.
Daniel's a little squirrely.
That's good. This episode, obviously, Daniel's, even before tribal council, like that dynamic really shifted for me because we're like, okay, Mike is actually much more onto Daniel than we thought. He knows that he is squirrely, that he's a little iffy. Even when he says things like, well, I've got to give it to him to kind of make him feel comfortable. Like he has much more agency in that duo than last week we thought. So already I was like, oh, this is pretty good from Mike. And I thought that, Mike had a horrible read on Daniel, and fully trusted him and was giving everything, and that is not true. So that's also a little worse from Daniel, that people are thinking that stuff about him.
Yeah, this is a hard turn on the Daniel portrayal here, that he loses things all over the place. He needs to take a look at the fine print as a lawyer, and bringing up the fact that he's a lawyer is not great considering the end negotiations of this episode. But he needs to look at the fine print. This is an example of the lawyer failing to do his lawyer due diligence. He did not look at the fine print of the parchment, which says that the idol will activate at the merge, even if the sayings have not been said.
This is a change.
And yes, this was new information to me, and I wasn't privy to it last season. If it was a rule,
no, last season was the opposite.
Yeah.
So last season the rule was that if you they changed one word, basically, like if the phrases aren't said at the merge, you get your vote back. But if the phrases aren't said, your idol becomes active at the merge. Here, last season, it said your idol is forever dead. So you had to say the phrase. So this is a big, big change, which I think is probably good because the Beware advantage has been so completely unfair up to this point where like nothing really behooved the owner. At least it's like you can do nothing, give up your entire vote for the pre-merge, which is horrible, but still have an idol assured to at the merge no matter what you do. And then it gives Mike the ability to make a choice not to say the phrase because he might rather give up his vote through the pre-merge, rather than not have an idol a little earlier. I mean, last time they were activated one episode before the merge, so it takes a while anyway, but he'd rather kind of risk that extra time and have the secrecy, which is a really interesting choice to give, and I enjoy that strategy from Mike. So I think this is a better change, but it is absolutely a 180 on what they were doing in season 41.
Yeah, and I think ultimately because of that, like I do think that Mike and to some degree Daniel walked backwards into, I think, probably the correct call most of the time. Unless
you really need the idol and your vote.
Really, really
bad
one spot and you need a vote in a particular spot.
Yeah.
Now, could you imagine if that third idol had been found and Mike did have the choice to say it out loud or hold it back, and then he chose not to, and then
he lost his vote. Yeah, luckily that choice was robbed from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, because you can't blame Mike on this. He did pick up Beware, which everyone has when given that opportunity. And that was last episode. Like, it's very much on Chanel at this point. He's operating with all the information. But yeah, if Mike didn't take it, but also assuming Chanel would have a vote, there actually would have been possibly something there. But it's really on Chanel just giving up her vote. Shipwheel Island.
But so I mean, we see something that is, I think, just meant to be an example of Daniel's squirreliness, which is that he needs to borrow the parchment, and I guess with it comes the idol. And then he goes to give it back after rereading this thing, being like, oh, that changes everything. Guess we're not voting Mike out. And Mike is like, dude, where's my idol?
Dude, where's my idol? Yeah.
Yeah. And Daniel's like, you didn't give me the idol. Mike's like, yes, I did, dude. What are you talking about? Don't do this to me. This is horrible. Like, this is terrible. You can't. This is like somebody giving you their prized possession, and you drop it and destroy it, and you're just like, that wasn't me.
I did this yesterday. Like, I literally did. No, because I needed to borrow my mom's car because I needed to put something in her like bigger boot, so I couldn't take my own car. And then like she like needed to leave after. She's like, where are the keys? And I'm like, aren't they like where we put the keys? And they'd like fallen down. Like eventually after like searching for like a good 30 minutes, they'd like fallen down like under the couch. And I checked around the couch, but they were like under something. I was like, oh my God, I lost my mom's car keys. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is exactly what Daniel did. And I just did it to her. She gave me a car and I was like, took the keys. I'm like, I don't know. It's my car now, I guess.
There is a moment from my childhood that haunts me to this day. I was a small child. I was in a store. And I was very thirsty, and I was asking my dad, can I please have a drink from the drink machine, like an iced tea? And he was like, no. And I was like, I'm so thirsty though. I would really love an iced tea. And he said, no. And then he went and got one for himself.
What?
And I was like, how dare you? So this being the sneaky little child that I am, as he puts the dollar in, I sneak in and I press the iced tea button before he can do anything. And out comes an iced tea. And he was like, all right, I don't want the iced tea. You can have it. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. I felt guilty, but I had my iced tea. And then I dropped it and spilled it all over the store floor. And I was like, I've been ruined. This is karma. I did a terrible thing and I don't even get the rewards from it. To this day, I feel guilty about this moment. I shouldn't have stolen the iced tea. And I feel like this is the kind of thing that Daniel did in this situation.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that he outlined why he couldn't win Survivor and then was like, and now a practical demonstration. So look, but the crazy thing about it was that I was like, oh, is he hiding the idol from Mike? Like, is that the next part of this where you realize it's going to activate? So you just keep, I don't know where I found it. I'm already kind of like a haphazard player who loses things. Like, is that the way he keeps it from him? But it actually just was an accident. So
yeah. Oh boy.
I'm sorry about what happened to your iced tea, Taran.
Thank you. I'm still trying to process it, like 25 years later and whatever, however many years it was. No, definitely not that many, 20 years later. So we also learned that that Daniel does want to side with Mike and Jenny, and we don't really hear why, because it does seem like they have options, him and Chanel, that they could go with Hai and Lydia, or they could go with Mike and Jenny. And I mean, if they wanted to, they could just vote Mike out right now. The idol would be re-hidden and they could like find it and hide it or whatever they wanted to do. Like, don't open it, like whatever they wanted to do. Right. Or they could open it right up and, or wait for the things to be said and then go open it up.
Like Shan had the information.
Exactly.
Like, made an informed choice. Yeah.
They could do that if they wanted. I wish the episode informed us more about like why they were making that choice. Maybe it was a tribe strength thing. That seems to be the implication from like the Mike side of things. Like Mike and Jenny were about tribe strength, and that's why they wanted to keep Daniel and Chanel around over Hai and Lydia. But whatever the reason was, they decide they want to side with Mike and Jenny, but Mike doesn't have a vote, which means that hopefully Chanel comes back with a vote. Otherwise, we might be in some trouble. In the meantime, Daniel's going to play both sides and say to Hai and Lydia, I'm totally with you. Don't worry about it. And to Mike and Jenny, oh, I'm telling them that I'm with them and they want to vote Jenny, but I'm actually with you. And even just before all of the other mistakes, I don't love how much information he's giving out here. I feel like being open about the fact that you're in the middle position and you're playing the middle and you're actively like lying to the other side. If I was playing Survivor, I'd be skeptical of that person, and I'd be like chomping at the bit to go and talk to the other side and be like, "What are you thinking about Daniel? How do you feel about is he saying same things to you that he's saying to me? Because how do I know which side is the truth, right? How do I know he's not playing me and not them? So you gotta I think you gotta be careful about that sort of thing. But it seems like it's a non-issue for this particular situation.
Well, that is a credit to Daniel and Chanel, just how much they are in the middle. And it probably speaks to the distance between the other two pairs where Jenny kind of spoke about just how strategically unaligned they were. And it is interesting to think why was it so much going with Mike and Jenny? They were willing to sacrifice Mike for Beware just yesterday. And now they're willing to give up everything to go with a side that doesn't have the votes. And we'll talk about it. Is it a strength thing? Because Daniel's shoulder, I think, is like a recurring issue. He's sitting out of like every challenge. They've mentioned it multiple times. Like he seems, because of the injury, to be the biggest physical liability, but we don't know the dynamics and relationships that make that so like strong, that four really wanting to stick together, because we're not in the mailbox, right? They're the bunnies. But I think what I want to talk about here is a segment I like to think is called Daniel and Chanel's Many Outs, because even after he makes like a colossal unforced error at Shipwheel Island, they still have so much capital at the top of that mountain that they have so many places that they could fix this. And the thing I think that they should have done most, and we'll talk, there was a lot of cute little plans. They try to go with one of them. 211 was mentioned, loving it. But the thing they should have done, especially in hearing that there was so little time when Chanel came back, she went to a confessional, then they had a few minutes before tribal council. The simple plan was best. They, at this point, are transparent swings. Credit to them that they're even allowed to be that. They're Schrodinger's pair. They're not with anyone. They haven't put pen to parchment. They can go with either side. And by the point that she comes back and says to Daniel, I might not have a vote, it's not let's do the cute thing, although we'll talk about it because there were a lot of really cute different options they could have done that are just fun to speculate about. But it's Daniel, I might not have a vote. We are going with Hai and Lydia. It wasn't our choice, but we were willing to sacrifice Mike just very recently. They want to work with us. They seem like nice people. We are a strong 4, and we are voting out, crucially, not Jenny, but Mike, because then at least he's one phrase from having an idol. So, if we vote out Jenny and then the phrase is idle, he'll idle out one of our 4. We'll take out Mike, we'll take out that threat, and we're a 4 now with Hai and Lydia because the decision and even the risk of not having a vote has forced me in that direction. I really strongly believe that they had that option to swing and they had to do it at that point because they'd lost some capital, because a mistake had been made at Shipwheel Island, but there was still that crucial out there and it could have been done in one conversation. Even if you don't vote for Mike, you can go for Jenny. But it's one conversation to be like, we're with Hai and Lydia now. That's the way the pendulum has swung for us.
Yeah, that is the biggest thing, and obviously that's the biggest thing once the decision is made to risk the vote, right? And that was my immediate assumption. Going into the Shipwheel Island situation, I was like, okay, theoretically, Chanel could lose her vote here. If that's the case, obviously they're just gonna have to side with Hai and Lydia. There's no other legitimate option here, and now there is a legitimate option that they have, but it's not one that they should be taking, obviously. And I think you can say to Mike and or Jenny, whichever one you don't vote out afterward, or even beforehand, depending on your relationship with them, I'm so sorry, I lost my vote. And that means we don't have the votes and we can't go to Rocks. We don't want to lose you, whichever one of them they keep. So we don't want to go to Rocks and lose you. And for that reason, we're gonna have to drop the other one. I'm so sorry. Either way, you have to explain to them that you lost your vote, right? So, and you might be losing one of those numbers anyway. So I feel like it's an explanation that's not I intentionally misled you and betrayed you and blindsided you. It's I'm sorry I screwed up at Shipwheel Island. It definitely damages the relationship, but not to the extent that's I just tried to bamboozle you into splitting your votes and then almost went to Rocks just to get you out, kind of damaging the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd never advocate telling them before because you never know what could be done. And I don't even think that I'd advocate for putting it on Shipwheel Island because what I would advocate for is Hai and Lydia are your pair, and they've always been your pair. This isn't a Shipwheel Island decision. You're coming back to Hai and Lydia and being like, it was always you, and we voted that way. Chanel had lost her vote, but we knew it wouldn't matter because we had 3 votes against 2. Even especially so, that's why Chanel thought it was fine to risk her vote, and that's why she didn't vote. Because we were always with Hai and Lydia, and then Jenny ostensibly comes back. And you don't have to say anything to Jenny because she's on a 4 against 1. It's yeah, sorry, Jenny, we were playing you. We were a clear swing vote, and we actually were on the other side. It's not about Shipwheel. It's not about anything. We have chosen and had always chosen Hai and Lydia, and that's our 4 that we're going through the game. Taku strong, the same way that the Taku 4. That's strength to me. Jonathan type strength in this 4. That's what I would advocate for, and I think that option was available to them. So not going that way. I mean, look, if it's a 50-50 between the pairs, then maybe that's why Chanel risked her vote. But at the same time, we're seeing Daniel one saying that he would prefer Lydia. So they have an inclination. If it's a strong 50-50, be like, I guess I'm going with Hai and Lydia, and maybe I'll get an extra vote. I can see that. But it wasn't a strong 50-50. They were heavily leaning to the point where they screwed up the whole game. They were in with Jenny and Mike. So at that point, obviously, you can't risk the vote. And once you have, and that's an error, Hai and Lydia, the decision has been made for you, by yourself, by your own choice. But that's it now. It's done.
Yeah, and this is when Chanel comes back from Shipwheel Island that we learn that, because at this point I'm like, okay, bye, Jenny. Obviously, that she's risked her vote, which means she's decided to stick with Hai and Lydia. But instead, we hear that she has a plan to make this work, which is she wants to split Hai and Lydia's votes so that it's a 2-1-1. And I think, yes, and I think that we have to consider that it seems, at least to me, like it's portrayed in a way where maybe a portion of this decision came from just the idea that she could do it? Because we get this from her.
That is the power of my social game. I can direct the votes without even having one.
Was the temptation to do something flashy and impressive too much? And it wasn't even as much just about which two do I want to go with. It was more about like, I see an opportunity to make something really cool happen here, and prove to like myself or whoever that like I've got this. I have so much power. I'm in between both of these groups. I can do whatever I want. I can direct their votes. I can do this.
I don't think so. I think that she is starting to get a little fearful, should I say, because she made a scary choice. Which is a scary thing. Play scared. No, but I think that boat ride. I think she like makes the decision. She's like, I'm not gonna play scared. I'm gonna do this thing. Then that boat ride, she's like, oh god, shiz, as fudge, as Marianne would say. This might be an issue. What's the plan? And I think she's pumping herself up as much as anything in that confessional to be like, it's okay because I have so much capital, which was true, that I can actually make this work regardless of not having a vote, which wasn't true. And I wish that she had kind of realized how difficult that situation was and how hard that would be to pull off and had gone with the safer thing. Because again, like it's in that safer choice of just going with High and Lydia. The safer choice would have been better at every juncture of this episode. But let's talk about this vote split. I'm just going to say, if you want some 2-1-1 votes, come over to International Survivor for Taran's listeners, because that's where we get the fun. We don't have a final 4 vote in US Survivor anymore, but we could have got a 2-1-1 here, which would have been so cool. I love the 2-1-1 for so many reasons. I liked this because it's a 2-1-1, but I also liked, because I know they always do it and it always makes me laugh, like the casualness of who you put on the split. Oh, the girls on the girl and the boy on the boys on the gender. It just makes sense, doesn't it? So I like going with that. And obviously the issue was in approach and how paranoid she was coming across. And then some of the other stuff at Tribal Council, it's hard to know when High was like, wait, no. But I think that some of the other stuff that we get shows how reticent High and Lydia might have been to split up their votes. Like at first, Lydia said it's going to be a straight 4. So that's risky, but that's how solid they want to be, obviously with this clear dicey swing pair. And then later they say it's going to be a 3-2-1, which people are saying doesn't make sense, but it does make sense to protect against shot in the dark. So 3 on Jenny, she plays shot in the dark, she protects. Now you've got a 1-1 tie, you'll win on the revote rather than Mike's vote deciding it. So there is merit there while still trying to keep it pretty safe in a 3. But I think the fact that they aren't immediately themselves, High and Lydia, saying let's go with a 2-2-2, which is just conventional, also protects against an idol, covers all your bases, to me shows how much they want to keep it as solid as possible while still protecting against mechanisms if they can. They probably really want to be on the vote together and just kind of have that like wall of votes even in their strong 2. So I think kind of seeing that approach shows how much they wouldn't want to go in the last like 5 minutes of scrambling time that they have. It's showing how much they really wouldn't want to go that way and split up their votes.
Yeah, and it's again, we don't see everything, but I think based on what we did see, it did feel like there was some visible reluctance to the idea of splitting votes, and I think this is a plan with so much downside, and because theoretically it can work. Like theoretically, if High and Lydia completely trust you and they're totally on board to split their votes, you can absolutely make this work. Plenty of people have in the past made similar things work before, right? It's not a bad, plan in theory, but in practice, it's not playing. And I think that once you see any kind of reluctance to it, and in the fact too that it's the very first vote that anybody is doing here, you don't know what kind of players you're working with, how solid they are, will they stick to what they said they were going to do, that sort of thing. The fact that all of that exists and there's some hesitance toward the idea in the first place, I think at some point you have to be able to just call it off and say, you know what, I don't know that this is going to land the way we think it's going to land. I mean, those episodes of Tyson are important because sometimes there is a player that will just decide to cast a vote because they feel that way, and it might screw you up if you're not careful. So, I think that was another indication, another point along the line where they could have bailed and just been like, you know what, let's not split our votes. You're right. Let's just go for it at this point. Although I guess once it's proposed and then they find out that Chanel lost her vote, they might be able to puzzle out what she was trying to do to them at that point. So she might have been all in at the point that she proposes it, but it depends on, again, like the read she has on them and the relationship they have.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information that Hai and Lydia are missing, which is why it's even more impressive that Hai can end up winning the day. Like, we'll talk about it. Like, what did he think was happening? Like, he could not possibly have thought that 2 people didn't have a vote. Like, Mike hadn't been anywhere. Maybe like it's a Jenny thing because she had been to Shipwheel Island, but they were operating with so little information when Chanel and Daniel have everything. So it's really, really impressive. But this vote reminded me in a lot of ways of the final 6 vote in Cambodia, which goes to the 0-0, and then we have a rocks discussion. So it's very similar in that way. But that vote started as well with Kimmy wanting to win on the split. So, okay, we'll split our 4, and then she was going to flip and go to the 3-2-1. And the same way, the majority were like, well, the plurality at that point were like, dicey, no. And they put all their 3 strong. So I think it's picking up on that energy and trying to read, like, does this person actually want to split, which makes sense against like a minority that could have an idol, or do you want to keep strong? And like what is their purpose in pushing that? Like, are they trying to screw us or are they trying to help us? And the same way Hai read the way that Jeremy, Spencer, and Tasha did not split the vote because they realized that was more dangerous. So there was a lot of similarities there. And yeah, the issue with this seems to be on approach. The issue seems to be that, like, even when splitting on gender, oh yeah, the girls, like, it's funny to me because they really try to go with that. But I think when there's 2 clear pairs, that feels like the obvious split. Like, okay, Hai and Lydia are clearly a pair. Daniel and Janelle, we're clearly a pair. We're going to split that way. I think like trying to split them up when they're so clearly connected does look dangerous to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it correctly called. I think that if I'm gonna guess, right, because we get to tribal, and even seemingly even before tribal, Hai is a little bit perturbed, but he's definitely making faces at tribal. And when I was watching live on Twitch, I was like, Hai is literally me right now when we play like Goose Goose Duck or Among Us, and I catch somebody in a lie, like making the face of like, wait, what? Like this seems wrong. This seems off. I have to imagine in my mind, Hai got that initial advantage, right? On in the first challenge, he got that 3-way
amulet
thing,
yeah.
Right? The first power that is activated is an extra vote. He has to imagine there are potentially extra votes floating around in the game.
Okay.
I imagine he thinks maybe Jenny or even Chanel, like maybe somebody has some kind of extra vote, probably somebody like Jenny or something like that, right? And for whatever reason, like getting the votes to be split 2-2 or something like that. Maybe he's not even worried about a betrayal, but he's worried about like, okay, now that I'm thinking about this, if there's a 2-2 split and Jenny has an extra vote, it's going to be 3-2-2. That would be terrible for us. And one of us goes like, so I think there's any number of reasons why he might have decided with potential powers out there. I know I have one, and it was a very secretive affair. So not even just the Shipwheel people might have powers at this point. I'm just gonna stack my votes like we originally intended. I think that's the safer play, because it did seem like he was still very confused and shocked when it came up as another deadlock. Yeah, so that would be my guess as to where his head was at.
I think sometimes it doesn't have to be about like knowing the like actual machinations, because it's impossible for him to know. Like literally, there's so much going on. It is impossible. Like I think sometimes you have to credit like read and instinct just on like something is fishy, and I'm not gonna part from like the one person that I feel best about. Like at least we're gonna have 2 votes. We're gonna see how that plays out. But without that instinct, which I do completely credit, it's really, really hard to know what he thinks is happening. Because okay, say he's got issues with Chanel. Like Chanel is pulling a full on Kimmy. She's flipping without Daniel. She's trying to 3-2-1 us. Okay, but then if you flip your vote to Jenny, you've just been 3-2-1 differently. Like you just put 2 on Jenny instead of 2 on Mike. So it can't be that. Even if he thinks like Chanel lost her vote, well then like if they're not with them, they're still losing 3-2. It's really, really hard to know. Like even if like Chanel lost her vote and only she's not with them, so she's trying to like 2-2-1 it, but then like they would win on the revote anyway. And you'd also just be changing the 2-2-1. I don't know what he possibly was thinking. It had to have been instinctive. I like your idea that it said people have extra votes based on the amulet, because he's definitely confused about where are the votes. It's like, not only where are the votes they should have cast, where are the extra votes I thought there might have been, and protecting against that and having safety in numbers when there could be more numbers. That to me makes the most numerical sense, because knowing who or what like could have possibly lost votes, there's no way he could even think that his 2 would ever matter. Like, if they're not with you, they're not with you. So if you don't trust them, which he seems to not, and that's why he doesn't go with the plan, you lost anyway, right? Except in this very specific situation. So I like the idea of extra votes. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, and what's super interesting about this too, right, is that Chanel and Daniel did get kind of unlucky here as well, because if the split had been reversed, if Lydia had been putting votes on Mike and Hai was supposed to vote Jenny, that means if Hai flips to Mike on the revote, he doesn't have they don't have the numbers anymore, because Mike already couldn't vote, which means Jenny keeps her vote and they would have the majority. Lydia would leave. So just by random, 50-50 chance of the women happen to be voting for Jenny, the men happen to be voting for the guys, that ended up sinking the ship, because obviously, Hai is flipping his vote just sort of seemingly randomly during tribal, not prepping ahead of time with Lydia, which means that if he had been flipping to Mike, it would have been an entirely different story.
Yeah, I mean, last season, when I found out that extra votes carry on the revote, which for a bunch of different reasons and confirmation bias and international precedents, I did not believe was true. But when I found that out, I was like, okay, revote target strategy is important. And I maintained that it was, and I don't know if anyone was interested in it, but I maintained that it was true. For example, if you if someone has an extra vote, you want to vote for them, because as a target, then they can't vote on the revote. If you're stealing a vote from someone, you obviously don't want to vote for them, because then your vote still won't carry and you can't use it on the revote. And I was like, this is important. And it's very important for the fact that it was Mike who didn't get voted for and it was Jenny, because Mike would have lost his vote twice on the revote. So it would have been, he loses it for Beware and he loses it for being the target, instead of covering both Mike and Jenny then losing their vote. And it would have meant that Daniel, Chanel, Mike, and Jenny could have won on the revote, because Jenny would have been voting and Mike would have just been double covered. But I don't think that this is bad luck. It is bad luck in the way that you're phrasing it, but they could have weaponized it. And that's why when I talk about some other cute little plans that they could have had if they didn't just go with the Hai and Lydia thing, you go to Hai and Lydia. You tell them Mike is one phrase from having an idol. As we've said, if they're flipping to Hai and Lydia genuinely, Mike actually is the better target. So like 80% of this plan is genuine. That's why it's so brilliant. If you're actually flipping to them, Mike should be the target. So you go to them with that information. It's not so shady that you know it, because you're such obvious swings. You're like, we're voting for Mike. Then you can go with Hai and Lydia if you want, or you can just flip back and on the revote. I hope that people understand it. Basically, so on the revote, Jenny would still vote. That's the important thing. It wouldn't just be the 1-to-1. Daniel's still voting, Hai's voting, but Jenny is still voting because she hasn't been covered as a target.
Yes.
Mike has been double covered. So that's how you're numerically protected.
Yeah, the people that are voted for lose their vote. They are no longer voting because it's assumed they're just going to be voting for each other. But obviously, when one of them doesn't have a vote already, that means that you can't you can't have negative votes.
Yeah.
So instead of Jenny losing her vote because she's one of the people voted for, she still has her vote. And instead of it being 2 votes locked, Daniel and Hai, it's Daniel, Jenny, and Hai. And they can outnumber Hai 2-to-1. And what I talked about, where like, okay, the random situation where if Lydia had been voting for Mike and Hai had flipped over to Mike, then lo and behold, they would have had them outnumbered. They could have, what you're saying is they could have intentionally planned for that as well. They could have said, you know what? We think Mike is the better target. We think he does
have an idol, like literally does have an idol.
Like they can say he does have an idol, or they can say like, we just think he's the better play. Maybe they say we think Jenny has the idol. So we think we have to vote for Mike just in case, right? Whatever it is to get the votes on to Mike. If both Hai and Lydia put 2 votes on to Mike, then Daniel and Jenny can vote for Lydia. And then on the revote, it's the same situation. Jenny and Daniel can still both outnumber high in the revote because Lydia will lose her vote and Mike has already lost his vote. And so they outnumber them there. So that would have been a definitely a less risky play if they feel good about being able to get the target onto Mike.
Well, I think like you have so much actual information to give that's so detailed that it can't possibly be a lie. Like, look what you can tell them, and it's not even about your advantage, and it will help your side. So like Mike and Jenny can't even be mad. Like they can be mad that Chanel lost her vote to put them in this position, but they can't be mad about the way that you've wrestled it back, which is to go to them and say, Mike has something called the beware advantage. Remember earlier today how Marianne talked about a bunny in a mailbox? She wasn't randomly just saying that. That is her phrase. That's so specific. His is going to get activated when one more person says a phrase, then he can say his phrase. And then if we vote out Jenny, he's coming back with an idol and idling one of us out. This is a real threat. Like, again, if they'd actually flipped behind Lydia, that is what they should be saying to them, and that's what they should be doing. So 80% is genuine on that. You go and you do it, but then you have the opportunity to actually flip back and actually vote Lydia out because the numbers work in that way. So for me, you go and you give the information. It's the perfect time to vote for him because he doesn't have an idol now. That's not a risk. But he very, very, very likely, because one phrase has been said, which I think is crucial, he very likely could have an idol tomorrow. It's crucial. Like, it's so easy. How could they refuse? How could they not believe that? So, and then they have the numbers on that. So I really do think there's something cute in that. I still think go with High and Lydia because in the 5 minutes that they had, go with the safe plan and you've been sneaking into it. But that's a cute little plan. Can I throw out another cute little plan for you? Because I have a bunch of different outs. So you go to Lydia and you say, either Daniel or Chanel, have to kind of throw the other one under the bus, ironically, but go, hey, Lydia, I'm Daniel. Chanel wants to go with the other two. I'm not going to rocks, ironically. We don't have the numbers. You're going home 4-2. Play your shot in the dark. I'm telling you this out of the goodness of my heart. I'm asking you, I'm putting 16.666% power in your hands. Please don't vote for me. This would, maybe a little risky, a little stupid if it were true, but like play your shot in the dark. I'm telling you this out of the goodness of my heart. Well, not please don't vote for me because she wouldn't have a vote, but please tell High not to vote for me. And then instead of you guys just losing 4-2, actually High 16.66% chance will, vote whoever he wants out of the game because we're going 4-2. So I'm giving you that shot. Take your shot in the dark. And then Lydia's not voting on the first vote. And then it's just High voting with Jenny and Daniel. Chanel and Mike have also lost their vote. So you're winning 2-1. There's something there, on the shot in the dark in terms of all the ways that there is to lose a vote. So yeah, I mean, I think that there might have been something that these things are just like cute little things for us to discuss on the podcast. I still think go with the conservative thing, but I'm just saying cute little options existed.
Yeah, I think
they actually went with one.
I think you need to be careful of telling somebody to play like that's a little bit like Candace telling Parvati like play your idol for yourself.
Okay, yeah. So is it just trying to make her so paranoid?
I think either like have her accidentally overhear that you're turning on, or just be like
accidentally on purpose.
Look, I'm so sorry, but I don't want to blindside you. We are going to be voting you out. We decided to go with Mike and Jenny.
Well, I don't have the numbers though, but like I wanted to work with you. Chanel wanted to work with them. Chanel's my number one. Like I'm just trying to help you, give you a chance, and High still has his vote, so you can still protect. And let's do that. I'm making sure we're not splitting. Like I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah, I think you have to hope that the risky part is that like if she sees through it, or if you go with like the more conservative approach, which was probably what I would do, which is like hope that by saying you're in trouble, she then decides to play it on her own instead of mentioning it directly. You still have to like if she doesn't play it, then you're in the same spot, right?
Yeah. If I were to order these plans, I would say number one, definitely just go with High and Lydia. It's done. You did it.
Yeah.
Second, I like the Mike plan a lot. I think it's really fun that you would win on the just numerical inconsistencies of a revote because I said last season that's going to be important, and I do think it's really fun that Mike instead of Jenny would really have changed things. So I think that's fun, and there's so much ammo there to make it work. Then I would go to the vote split plan that they went with, but I would deliver it better, and then I would go probably to shot in the dark. So they had like a real meaty option in flipping, and then they had a few cute little things they could have tried. They tried one of the cute little things. The vote split is definitely cute and weird, but they couldn't pull it off. So I think they had so many options. They had outs.
And then of course above it all, don't risk the vote.
Don't miss the vote. No, kill me to my soul. I was watching with like a few people and just like literally on the edge of my seat. And then I was, no, how? Your vote is so important. Like, how many times do I have to advocate for like the agency that your vote gives you, Chanel? Your swing vote, your crucial swing vote. Okay, I'm still reeling from what we did, but we're gonna have to talk about rocks now, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, all those plans sounded like something that Mike talked about.
I don't think she would come back and give us a snow job.
A what? Yeah, hear that again?
I don't think she would come back and give us a snow job.
I'm unfamiliar with these, Shannon. Can you explain what a snow job is to me?
I don't want to, and I mean, I don't think it's anything, but man, what's going on with that? I don't know.
Sounds like all the plans we came up with, I think.
Yeah, it sounds, I don't know, it sounds weird. So I want to talk about rocks because
yes.
So I want to talk about International Survivor, and this is the only thing I'll have to vaguely spoil for any non-international listeners. But if you're not an international listener, I hope you become one after what I'm about to say, which is
very, very minor spoilers here.
Well, it is. It's a thing that happened, but it's impossible not to talk about it. But I won't talk about anything from then. Yeah, in Survivor South Africa, Philippines, they went to rocks in episode 2. It was incredible. It put Survivor South Africa on the map. I've talked about how it was life-changing for me. Because we weren't going to cover Survivor South Africa. It was the first season of the reboot. We didn't know what was happening. Then Twitter started being like, they went to rocks in episode 2. What's going on? It was a disaster tribe. And from then Mike and I were like, yeah, we're going to cover this show. And it actually never let up. It's an incredible season. Please go watch it. But they did go to rocks in episode 2. And that really does influence my perception of, like, we'll talk through, should Hai go to rocks? Should Daniel go to rocks? In that season, that tribe never goes back to tribal council. The next episode, they win immunity, and then they swap. So I'm very, very anti for anyone, just as like a blanket rule. There's always the qualifier of going to rocks in the pre-merge, in the pre-swap. You have a 2 out of 3 chance for them of winning immunity. You know, again, and never going back to tribal council. They would think they're going to swap. The whole of last season, we assumed there'd be a swap. I don't think there'll be one now because it's just like the 41 redux and there wasn't a swap. But they should be thinking conventional wisdom is there'll be a swap soon. It's just a couple of challenges and then you have new life in the game. So to put your hand in a bag when you may never even vote with these people again and there could be new life and you're going to risk your life in the game. I chastised every single person who did it in Survivor South Africa because I thought, your game can't be worth that risk at that time, even for the people who kind of won out on that vote and like were in a minority position and ended up, coming into a better position for it. So that to me, I just want to say is like a qualifier, and we'll talk about it specifically for Daniel and Hai, because I do think it's a different position of whether they should go to rocks. But yeah, going to rocks on the pre-merge, it has been seen before in International Survivor, and it's wild. Like what like Daniel says, I don't want to go to rocks by day 7. I'm like, Daniel, you're a super fan, you probably know it's been done, and it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so I was watching this live, and during the commercial break, I was saying, okay, this is interesting. If I'm high, I have if I'm high, I have no reason to back down here. If I'm high, I am fully just willing to go to rocks, mostly because I don't believe that they're going to go to rocks. And I'm going to say outright, there's 0 chance I'm changing my vote. Because I know that there are 4 people that are going to be drawing rocks, which means there's a 75% chance that you guys lose a number and I'm still here. Which means the odds are in my favor. And if I give in, I'm now at the bottom. If we lose one more immunity challenge, I'm out. There's no reason for me to go to rocks. I'm super loyal to my person. I'm not doing it. And I'm not backing down like an ounce. And no matter how much it seems like the other person is adamant about it. Because if I'm Daniel, I'm going to give a very strong front at first that I am also willing to go to rocks. I'm going to be like, first of all, and this is how he started too. So I thought he was going in this direction. I would be first of all, because I know I'm in the weaker position. So I would try to open to prevent him from getting me on the defense. First of all, I'm willing to go to rocks. I'm not changing my vote 100%. I'm definitely not leaving my girl Jenny behind. I'm loyal to these people. This is what's going to happen. If you want to go to rocks too high, that's totally fine. And then if high's like, all right, Jeff, we're going to rocks, I'd be like, wait a minute, hold on. Okay, I was kidding. Because if I'm Daniel, there's zero chance I'm going to rocks here. And I'm very willing to back down if high puts up a strong enough front.
Yeah, except that you had something to back down from, hopefully, and that's what we'll talk about in the negotiation. I think what you said about weak position is important, because that to me is kind of the context I want to give before we even go into the negotiation, which is basically how incentivized should they be to go to rock. So for high, I think it is easier. First, best case scenario, you get Lydia through. Okay, that's the best. Then for me, I am actually a little bit torn on what's better, rocks versus sending Lydia home, because I do think 25% chance you go home. Like that is a one, like you're out. Like the game is over. Like everything you've and again, if you're not out, you are going back to a pre-merge tribe, pre-swap tribe that may never vote again. Never did in Survivor South Africa. It was maddening. They pulled back these dynamics. They never even came to fruition.
I think you have to look at 25% chance of drawing the bad rock,
25% chance of going home.
Right, of going home, drawing the bad rock.
Going home. That's I mean, like, play scared. Play scared sometimes. Be fearful.
But also,
be scared.
33% chance that you end up at tribal next week or next round, right? Because there's basically zero. Although I guess Jackson was medevac, so maybe there could be a swap at because they're at 15 now. So maybe that does alter the formula.
They're gonna swap. Although no, so this is the fourth person out. So,
or you know what? Yeah, they're not swapping with 3 tribes again. So so they're not going to swap yet.
You conventional wisdom when you would think I'm going to go into a 7-7 next. As a fan, I would think that's a very, very high likelihood.
This is the 4th person voted out, right?
Yeah, so you're about to go to 14, 7-7 swap. That's actually pretty standard. Like I'd be thinking that's a high chance. A high chance. And so, but I also see for him, obviously, you don't want to go back to a 4-1. You do have a 75% chance of winning rocks, although the 25% chance means you go home, which is horrible. But you do have that. You will pull back numbers. You will stick loyal to, this is the main thing for me, you'll stick loyal to your only relationship. Like, even if you're going to swap, you want that relationship to come through. Like, you don't want to leave a tribe with no one and nothing. Like, even if Lydia gets swapped to another tribe, like, you have that really, 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 really strong connection that you went to rocks for. And that maintains as long as she stays in the game. So I do think, for me, I'm at a crossroads about how much he should go to rocks, but like it's a little bit even, where I see definitely both sides. For Daniel can't go to rocks. So best case scenario, you pull over high, you keep Jenny around. Second best, bye Jenny. Like we're not going to rocks. And then for me, the biggest issue with that is that Mike has lost his vote. So you come back to a 2-2, but Mike is one phrase from getting his vote back, and Hai and Lydia don't know that Mike has lost his vote long term because that had never happened before season 41, so they couldn't even barely consider that. So they're still coming back trying to work with you, thinking that they're on the bottom. So you come back to at least like the assumption of a majority that you can try and like manipulate and use, and a possible majority, you're one phrase away. And you come back and you say to Chanel and Mike, it's a very, very, very easy pitch, because Chanel and Mike didn't seem to want to go to rocks. Hai has more freedom. He's only making the decision for himself. Daniel's making the decision for all 3 of them. So you go back and you say, yeah, I really like Jenny. She was a part of our majority, but we hopefully will have a majority anyway. And you're my 1 and 2. So I wasn't going to send one of us, like a 75% chance that one of us goes home. It's not just that it could be me. It could also be one of you. So it's an easy pitch. Jenny has to go. And then the worst case scenario would be going to rocks with 75% chance of that loss. Actually, probably even worse than that would be like for no reason exploding your game and alienating your number 1. But that's actually not even on the board. So in the hierarchy, in like the tier list of what Daniel should want, rocks is definitely at the bottom. So Hai comes into the negotiation, yes, with more leverage, because he's got he's got more incentive to actually go to rocks. But as we'll talk about through the negotiation, Daniel loses any sense of leverage he almost even had pretty much immediately. But yeah, I do think that he comes in a weaker position because he can't go to rocks. Like that's a horrible, like, and you have the pre-merge stuff that I'm talking about, where you might not even go back to tribal council, and you're risking your life and then allies at that time's lives. So no, it's not happening.
And I mean, this is like definitely, this is like one of the cutesy sort of plans that we were talking about before, but like, and probably way too much to expect to think on your feet about. But there's also the idea that like once it ties in the first place, there's almost, unless you really feel like you can get Hai to flip, which clearly Daniel didn't. Because he opened with "I'm not gonna go to rocks."
Yeah.
But if you plan to open with "I'm not gonna go to rocks," you might as well just flip immediately and not even go to the tiebreaker in the first place, not have to reveal that Chanel didn't vote. And then maybe you could just go to Hai and Lydia afterward and be like, so what the hell happened? I voted Jenny out. Did she have an extra vote or something? Like what was, there were only 4 votes red. Like, I don't understand what happened there. But clearly we won the day. Clearly we neutralized whatever power Jenny had by voting for her. You know, like, I feel like there's maybe something you can get out of that.
I'm confused. I don't know where I put my water bottle. What's going on? Let's just not talk about it ever again. It's fine. Jenny's here. Jenny's gone. Lydia's here. It all worked out, and let's not talk about it anymore.
Now, I don't think that works, because I think they told Mike the plan, and Mike is at that point incentivized to be like, no, they planned on blindsiding you. Dummies.
I told you it was squirrely. Yeah.
But yeah, so it gets to the tie, and Daniel opens up with all right, so first of all, and I'm like, okay, lawyer, here we go. This is exactly what I was saying you should do, Twitch audience. And he goes, first of all, I'm not going to rocks. I think we can all agree nobody wants to go to rocks. And if I'm high, I'm like, all right, I just won.
High. Yeah.
And I am high.
Yeah. Like, maybe you should have been doing this a little sober. No, I think that not flipping on the revote makes sense if you want the opportunity to try and sway High over. There's no consistency between not flipping on the revote, but then basically immediately flipping within 10 seconds of the negotiation, which is pretty much what he did. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to see Daniel in a hostage situation. It's like, first thing, I'm going to tell you everything. Like, he folded like a cheap deck chair within the first 5 seconds, but I actually will disagree with you to a degree. I don't think the only issue was that opening and saying, I don't want to go to Raw. It's like, hi. Well, I mean, that was terrible. Hi, I have nothing. Here's my cards. You just decide what you want. I also think he shouldn't have opened at all, because this is not like a simultaneous game like you do at Shipwheel Island. You have to make the decision together. It's a sequential game. So if you go second, you've just got an information advantage. Maybe High was going to open and be like, I don't want to go to rocks. It's like, oh, okay, great. Great. Then I win. You know, like, I think that, like, just hearing High out and seeing where he stands so that you can make your move based on it would have been a lot of power to wield. So even to start out and be like, I'll open, no one's asking you to do that. Like, don't start off.
See, I personally, if I'm in Daniel's position, I would start off, but I would start off by saying I'm definitely going to rocks, by like leading with that. Because if High is going to say I'm not going to rocks, me saying I am going to rocks is almost definitely not going to change his mind. He's not going to be like, oh, you are willing to go to rocks? I guess in that case, I am also willing to go to rocks, right? So I don't feel like you lose anything by opening there. Like, it's possible, yes. But like, for me, like, I want to put High in the defensive position. I want High to be in the spot where he is the one making us go to rocks right now. I am already locked in. I'm going to rocks. Now the decision is yours, High. Do you want to go to rocks? And instead, when High is the one to say, I'm willing to go to rocks, now it's on Daniel. Now Daniel has to be like, but do you really want to? Yes, I do want to go to rocks. So you make the decision. Do you want to go to rocks? And when you put it in their hands, you know, now they're like, damn it, now I'm the one that has to give, right? And it doesn't always work that way. Like, you can't always maintain that momentum, but you want to keep the other person on the defensive, I think, if possible.
I think it's harder because High did have more leverage, so there's more chance that he's going to open and say, I will go to rocks, and that puts you on the back foot. But I just think there's something in feeling High out, and if he's more incentivized not to go to rocks, and like the hope that he would be like, okay, I'm going to open, we're not going to rocks, like, who would do that? And then you're like, great, because basically, I mean, to lose a negotiation, 5 seconds into it happening, like, High had 3 choices that Daniel was going to present to him. Like, we're going to go to rocks, or like, we're going to have to vote out Jenny, or we're going to have to vote out Lydia. And you just said you're not going to rock, so you just gave High the decision between Jenny and Lydia. Well, he wants to keep Lydia, so that's done. Like, the negotiation is over. Like, it's over.
And the worst part, so I mean, this is like, obviously this is a cacophony of terrible decision making to this point, right? But this is the moment where I fell out of my chair at how terribly he handled the situation, because up until this point, like, at least you could see what they were trying to do. right? Like I can
see
see that this plan could have theoretically worked. In practice, it
know.
didn't. I could see where like all of these things, like you can sort of see, obviously they're bad, but they're not just like what in the world are you thinking? It's more just like, what are you, come on, you know better than that. Whereas
I definitely was
Daniel,
like, what are you thinking, like 8 times, but sure. Let's be kind.
I think people know where I'm coming from here. So we get to this point though, and Daniel, and it's more understandable that he's a mess in this spot because he's thinking on his feet in this position and he's on the spot. But it's just like bad decision after another where he opens up, he gives away all of his leverage, but then he also doesn't give in, because it's not like he's saying, I'm not going to rocks. So, hi, I'm so sorry, but I'm with you now, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm definitely not going to rocks. I apologize so much for what I did. Of course, I'm going to be with you now. I made a terrible decision. I'm absolutely on your side. It was, I'm not willing to go to rocks. So, hi, I would like for you to take out Lydia, please. And Hai was like,
I'll be
no.
a friend.
Yeah, Hai was like, I'm not going to do that. And he was like, really? Please though, like he still wasn't even giving in. Like it was like it's so clear that you are trying to make something happen, but you have no idea how to make it happen, and so you're just stalling right now. And it's not exactly making Hai feel like good about the situation. Like giving away all of your intentions here, and then of course on top of that, the completely out of the blue throwing of Chanel under the bus. Which I thought was probably the worst part of all of this.
Definitely.
Because he is now like ruining his relationship with Chanel. And also, if I'm in this tribal, I don't care who I am. I don't care if I'm Chanel, Hai, Lydia, Jenny, or Mike. If I watch Daniel in a panicked moment throw his closest ally under the bus for no good reason, there's never a chance I'm working with this guy ever in this game. Not in a million, not if I had to, would I trust this guy with anything, because I just saw what happens when the chips are down.
Yeah, cue the Kelly Wentworth gif of kicking Terry under the bus. We're going to have to talk about how he threw his number one under the bus for basically no reason. But they were talking about it on Know-It-Alls about the idea of just capitulating to taking out Jenny, which again, he basically does in the first 5 seconds because they're not going to rock. So Jenny's going to go home because Hai is not going to take out Lydia because he has won this negotiation. So there is merit to that. The merit might have been in flipping on the revote, if that's what you were going to do immediately in the negotiation. But the merit is then you come back and you're like, I didn't want to send us 3 to rocks. I didn't want to send Chanel and Mike and me like that. And that's going to be like our group. I know it made it dicey, but also you can come back to Chanel at that point and be like, because at that point, most of it is like pretty much all of it is her fault. Like they each could have taken different outs and they both could have led it that way to just go with Hai and Lydia and all the cute plans we're talking about and pulling that off better. But this is all caused by Chanel. So Daniel's going to have to go back to Chanel and be like, look, you put us in a difficult situation. I did what I had to do. I sacrificed Jenny. Hopefully Mike gets his vote, or Hai and Lydia want to work with us because they think that they're on a 2 to 3. So there's merit in throwing Jenny under the bus anyway, but just not in such vocal terms, basically, as he does. Especially if you see those tiers of like going to rocks is so much worse than losing Jenny, which it is. He definitely doesn't want to go to rock. So there's definitely merit there. But it is in the spiral that we can talk about, because he throws Chanel under the bus to say it was Chanel's idea, which Steven says is true, which I disagree with. Like, it's a group decision.
Oh, no. I don't think this is true at all. We saw from him before she even came back that he wanted Lydia to go.
Exactly. I completely agree.
So the idea that like he would have sided with Hai and Lydia, at least in terms of how it was presented to us, is absolutely a falsehood.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even if it was true, it's not even a good excuse because like you still did it. Like, oh, well, it was Chanel's idea. It's like, well, if she jumped off a bridge, that's what I would be saying. Like, where is your power in this? You're 2 people, and she actually doesn't even have a vote. Maybe you didn't know that, but like at the very least, you're 1 vote each. Like, you still went with it. And also, it's not a great excuse to be like, it's really on Chanel because I'm just so weak. Like, I'm weak enough to throw my number one under the bus. I'm weak enough to not even go with my agency to protect you in the first place. It's it's their first vote ever. It's his first vote ever. It's episode 3. Part of me came out like, Daniel, 0% chance of winning the game. Not even, I mean, like, to burn that relationship with his number one, like, that's the most important thing he can come back with. But also just in the way that he looks. Are these people going to be jurors? Like, how can you get past that perception where, best case scenario, they see you as spineless, like a spineless kind of weasel who doesn't protect you and who goes with what other people want and then throws his number one under the bus to do it. And maybe even other worst case scenario, you're a liar and you just threw your number one under the bus erroneously. Both of those things are terrible. Like, I don't even know what to say about it. Like, don't do that.
And as we just said, possible swap coming up in the next round. Like, so what is even the point of any of it if they swap next week and you've swapped onto a new tribe, maybe with Chanel, and it's like, what did that give you? Like, what did this do for you? Absolutely nothing. And trying to blame. So I mean, I will say again, like, I think there are seeds of this that maybe could be something, right? I think if you swap your vote, you give in, Jenny leaves, I'm so sorry. Then you go to camp that night and you're like, I'm so sorry. Like, this is what happened. This is how it came about. No, you don't need to like fully cast blame or anything like that. But you say, like, Chanel lost her vote. Mike didn't have a vote. So we decided to do this.
So we decided not to side with you in the face of all reason.
And I'm really sorry. I really regret it. Right. And then I think you have the option either that night or maybe the next morning, depending on like how much time you have or whatever. You go to Lydia and Hein and you're like, I've been thinking about that vote, and I think that I really just got swept up in Chanel's idea, and I don't know if she's good for my game. Like, I can't believe I did that, and I'm so sorry. Like, you can throw her under the bus at that point, right? Like, there's a world where you can pin the blame in private on her after some thought. That I'm coming to see the light, right? That makes some sense. We've seen that happen before. I saw that happen on Big Brother a lot. But when it happens immediately, there's no plausible deniability that this is genuine. It's like you're walking with some friends like on a cliffside, and you try to push Lydia off. And Hai grabs her and goes, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And Daniel goes, "What? It was Chanel," and he pushes her right off. Like, you clearly had planned on doing that. You don't just like, oh, I don't know. This just naturally occurred to me that it was actually all her fault, and now she's falling off a cliff. Right? Like he planned on clear. Like, there was some kind of idea that like. He's just immediately going to flip on her, immediately going to blame her for everything. It comes off as just trying to escape the blame and pass the buck, as opposed to sort of trying to take responsibility while kind of subtly blaming somebody else. And I think this is like one of many pieces of like what he did wrong here in this moment.
If you come back just with Chanel, like, you're okay. Like, you're coming back with Hein and Lydia, who think they're in a 2 to 3. They want to work with you. Like, all right, that didn't work out. We're going for Mike. He doesn't have a vote. Or Mike gets his vote. Now we're at 3. Like, you'd still be in a little bit of a swing position, especially with Hein and Lydia not knowing how much power they have in a 2-2, thinking they're at a 2-3. Like, you have negotiating power then. You have leverage then. Just come back with your number one is what I require of you. So to throw Chanel under the bus, like, I don't know. It's painful because we'll talk about it in the Stockwatch probably. Like, the big question is who was worse, Daniel or Chanel. Chanel like was the reason any of this happened, but at least she made bad decisions in what was presented to her. Daniel like went off board, like went off script. Like, this wasn't even presented to him. He just was like,
exactly.
He just picked it.
That's what I was trying to vocalize before.
I mean, it's pretty painful. Like, in terms of like everyone else's part in this, it's kind of hard to blame anyone because Daniel does come in with so much less leverage and then immediately gives up any sense of leverage he might have even remotely had. I thought Jenny had a couple of funny things though when she says that Hai should vote out Lydia because they all decided to vote out Lydia and he'd be fracturing the tribe if they vote her out. I'm like, those are reasons he on the bottom like should vote you out. Like, that's exactly, he wants to fracture the tribe. Like, let's do this. And I think what's ironic is that as the negotiation goes on, Hai actually becomes less and less incentivized, I think, to go to rocks. Like, you want to keep Lydia, but at the very least, you're coming back to a thing where even if Lydia goes and you didn't go to rocks or anything, and somehow we made this work. Like at that point, he's won the negotiation, so it's done. But at that point, it's like, even if Lydia went, you actually wouldn't be next, and you're definitely not coming back to like a 1-4 situation because the entire game has been blown up. So he actually becomes less and less incentivized to go to rocks, but at that point has won the negotiation like 20 minutes ago because it happened in minute 1. So it was all on Daniel. What can I say? You know, like Mike and Chanel, I think pretty clearly don't want to go to rocks. You know, like Mike is trying to mediate some stuff and obviously campaign for Jenny, but like Mike does not want to go to rocks. No one wants to go to rocks. Daniel's coming back to an easy sell of have to take out Jenny. Were the three of us gonna? No, they didn't want that. Like he has this really unique and I think interesting situation of negotiating for them and having their life and their chance at rocks in his hands, which was not something we've seen before.
Yeah, and
usually they have the chance to negotiate.
Yeah,
but yeah. So it's got a lot there, Daniel.
And I think another option, like that he could take here is just be like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Mike, Chanel, I'm sorry, Jenny, you don't have a say in this, but Mike, Chanel, what do we want to do? Are the three of us willing to go to rocks?
Because we're all going to rocks. Like I am voting, but it's not me. Like he did make it quite individual, and it felt like they ended up they were campaigning for themselves, and they have a huge stake in this. They have as much stake as he does. But to make it individual when it's like it's not my vote, it's for the three of us. Like I'm doing it for the three of us, and they would have been like, yeah, we're not going to rocks. Like they, same way that they have a 75% chance, he has a 75% chance. They have less leverage, he has less leverage. They're making that decision with him, and it's collaborative and it's done, and it's not all on him, but he like individualizes it when he's doing something for the good of them. Like he's also saving them from going to rocks, and he still manages to hurt them all in the pursuit of that.
It's kind of like what you think I did to you in the draft, where like he can ask them and then it will be their decision to have not gone to rocks and let Jenny go if they say that. And then if for some weird reason they both say, actually, we're willing to go to rocks, worst case scenario, you go, okay, sorry, I wasn't actually willing to go to rocks. Sorry about that. But most likely they're going to tell you don't go to rocks. And it's now their decision. Now it was a group thing and you still have the three of you. And again, you have to either hope for a swap or hope that Mike gets his vote back. Either way, you're still in a decent position because worst case scenario, it is still a tie and it is still deadlocked. And so like you're not in an awful spot here.
That's
forward
interesting.
If you keep those allies.
Yeah, because so the problem, so he opens with it, and I think a lot of the emphasis has been on that he said, like, I don't want to go to rocks, and the don't want to go to rocks part of that and losing all leverage has been focused on, but it's the I don't want to go to rocks. It's first like, what are we doing? Like, yeah, we're not going to rocks. We don't want to go to rocks. Like, that's different. That's a different statement. It still has lots of leverage, but it's done it as a group, and let's all just kind of rally tomorrow on the fact that Jenny had to suffer for this, and we'll talk about poor Jenny, who had to go to all of this, but there were options there. I know it looked bad, and I know so much had been lost to get to there, but it wasn't so bad. It should have been worse. Like, how many mistakes were made to get to this point? It should have been even worse. They should have been dead and buried, but they weren't. There was something there, but now they are like 6 feet under for sure. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. I feel bad for Chanel and Daniel, obviously, that so much criticism has to come to the gameplay. And I think every podcast this week is going to qualify with, like, we're not in the mailbox. And obviously, like, they're good people and we want to keep it a game. But, like, from a game perspective, it's hard for me not to, yell.
To be clear, I am still a Chanel fan, and I am hoping that she rebounds
How is it
from
not
this.
Stanel?
Stanel? Yeah. I think that could work.
Yeah.
I want to know from you, though, because we talked about this a little bit. You're in highest position. Worst comes to shove. Do you go to rocks if Daniel doesn't back down?
I'm torn. I don't know, because you have to watch Survivor South Africa season 6, and I hope a lot of the listeners do. It's such a good season. They never went back. And there was someone who forced the rocks brilliantly, had been on the minority, a really good player, and had forced the rocks, and everyone was like, that was amazing. And even for her, I was like, but you never went back. Like, you still had a 1 in 6 chance for them of pulling the rock out of the bag. You never went back to tribal council, and the dynamic shifted so much. But to keep that relationship with Lydia, I don't know. I think I'm probably 1% leaning to, like, don't go to rocks. But obviously he wins the negotiation. But I also see that to me is maybe one of the most chances of going to rocks in the pre-merge and pre-swap that I could possibly even remotely endorse.
I think I'm definitely going to rocks. I think that's the call I make. I like
because you don't play with fear.
Because I don't play with fear.
That's why. That's the reason.
But just like and obviously these things are not equatable at all, but in terms of like having any idea of like what I'm willing to do in situations like this, but like thinking about like the game of Sequester that I played, like that was very much my mindset in various situations. Was like I was very willing to like roll the dice
because you were playing Sequester,
like
Taran. Like you were playing.
I know. That's what I'm
they
saying.
went out
Obviously
to Fiji. There's like a million.
I qualified it with obviously not equatable. But that's my inclination sitting at home, and it's my inclination for the closest thing that I've ever come to it. I think that's what I would do. I think that for me, taking a risk to keep my ally in the game is like I'd rather roll the dice for a better spot in the game than kind of like lying down and hoping that I can crawl my way back up eventually, and hoping that there's a swap, and hoping that we don't lose another immunity challenge. Because if I don't roll the dice and I lose Lydia, and then there's no swap, and we go to an immunity challenge, and maybe they even throw the immunity challenge because they know I'm about to flip on them. Like I'm gonna feel, I'm gonna really regret it. Whereas if it's like, okay, I go to rocks, I draw the wrong one, and then there's a swap next time, I still feel like I made the right call overall. I still feel like for me, like the percentages are higher on that end.
I feel like we have had this conversation now multiple times, which was around like, do you want to be idled out, or do you want to like make your own decisions in that? And there's probably some, connective tissue there to like the randomness of the game and how much like you, I think, are willing to go more with the randomness, and I like control, and I don't like to put my hand in bags of rocks, and one of them is going to send me out of the game. I will say that it depends when. If Daniel has burned everyone, as we saw him do, but at the very end, he's like, you know what? This has gone poorly. Screw it. I'm going to rocks. We're doing it. We're going to rocks. At that point, I'm actually not going to rocks because. Oh,
I agree. Actually,
yeah. Like at that point, everything's on fire, and I'm like, okay, fine. Well, Lydia will go, and we'll come back, and no one will be talking about me. And it sucks to lose Lydia, but
at that point,
At
that point, I'm positioning myself as the savior of Mike and Chanel, who are probably saying, "Please don't do that, Daniel." And I'm going to be like, "Okay, you know what? Screw this guy. I'll take out Lydia. Let's all align and take this guy out next."
Yeah. Let's be the anti-Daniel club for a little bit. Yeah. So I think at the end of the negotiation, if somehow Daniel's whole world went and turned around to screw it, I'm going to rocks. At that point, I'm like, wait, no, now I'm actually not, because I'm coming back to the most fractured tribe ever, and I'm not even like a part of that. Like, if anything, you're probably all still coming to me. At the beginning of the discussion, before everything has been burnt to the ground, the Lydia thing is what's key to me, because it's so much about keeping that core ally who you could be swapped away from tomorrow, but like that key relationship, your only relationship, is really, really important to me. But I think it's also important to know that he's going to rocks with a 75% chance of winning, but even he thinks he's coming back, and he and Lydia will still be in the minority. And at that point, without everything being burned down, they still might be a 3-2, and you've risked 25% chance of your game for doing that, and you might swap. And even if you don't, like, are you even in the best position with Lydia? I think there's enough there where you're hoping the game changes enough, where you're on like the ice anyway with Lydia, that I don't know if it's worth the 25% shot at my game. I still think I probably wouldn't go to rocks, but I think I would be, again, like really, really 50-50 on it. So I probably just have to make the call on what made me more scared. No, I think that, yeah, I do believe it's not even that great with Lydia, but from what he thinks, it's better than he knows, because Mike doesn't have a vote. It all really depends on how much Daniel has burned it to the ground and at what point of the negotiation that's happening in. But I still think I'm probably less high on high going to rocks than most of the fandom has seemed to be. And I do think that's largely influenced from just watching the way that it immediately swapped in Survivor South Africa. And just seeing what a pre-swap game is like. So put your hand in a bag on day 7. It's very hard for me to advocate that for anyone.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get to some ratings?
No, let's do the Stockwatch. Let's do everyone's favorite question of the week: who was worse between Daniel and Chanel? That's what it is, right?
That's definitely part of it. Yeah.
I want to ask about the ratings. Firstly, I listened to your podcast last week, and I listened to it like the day off, because I watched the episode on Thursday night, so I'm like listening to it on my Thursday, and it was funny because you said something like, Swathy's going to go to rocks. And it took a second for my mind to adjust because I've heard the term go to rocks so much in Survivor history for you to be like, oh, he's saying go to rocks, Roy.
Yeah.
But like I think that you manifested. He's like, oh yeah, would Dre comes in, then I think Swathy's going to go to rocks, and I was like, go to rocks. Oh, rocks, Roy. And then I was just laughing later that night when the rocks discussion became so imperative on the tribe, not even with someone named Rocks Roy. So, but I noticed, I feel like I'm going to be a bit all over the place with my ratings because you were giving like 7s to Jonathan. I would have given him like a 9. Like I feel like, is it meant to be quite measured? Because I might be like quite extreme.
You can be as extreme as you want. For me, it's it's also like with Survivor, it's a pretty new thing, so I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I want to do it. For me, it's definitely like I would feel uncomfortable going to a 9 when it's like there's so much I don't even know about his actual position, and like for all I know, like everyone secretly hates him. Like that's because like that's how Survivor edits the show sometimes. And so like for me, it's going to like either he does something like super impressive in an episode or super terrible in an episode that makes me rate extreme, or it's going to be like more toward the later episodes where I'm feeling a little more comfortable about like how people are actually playing. But I think there's also a case to be made, and maybe this is the direction we go, where it's like, might as well take some wild swings. We don't know, so let's just say seems like he's doing really great. Why don't we give him a 9?
Well, this is like the different positions that we come from. Like you come from Big Brother and you're like, we see so little. I'm coming from Australian Survivor, where at the very least, US Survivor hasn't like frankenbitten their confessionals from 3 different points in the game. Like I seem like we know like a little bit about where they actually come from. So for me, Survivor South Africa is the most transparent, but it's at least more transparent than Australian Survivor, which will like construct narratives a little bit more. So I feel like I know a lot. So that's like the different positions that we come from.
There you go. Well, so for Shannon's audience, if you haven't listened to the Stockwatch before, you haven't listened to the Big Brother one, basically what we do is we go through each player, we talk about their game, and we give them a rating from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst. They played as poorly as could be, basically have no chance of winning, to 10, like they played as well as I've seen this round played before, and they have a great chance of winning. You would expect the top players of all time to receive 10s and some of the worst players to receive 1s. For me, I tend to look at 3 factors when I'm giving these ratings. One is long-term equity. Like how likely are they to make it to the end, win a jury vote, win the whole thing? That's obviously hugely important. It's more important the longer we get into the season, the closer we get to the end, obviously. Second is sort of just short-term position, short-term safety. How likely are they to be voted out next episode? Are they at the bottom of their tribe? Are they at the bottom of whatever? Is it looking like they might go home soon? Or are they positioned really well? Are they super safe for a while and they don't need to worry? And then third factor that I typically look at is performance in this particular episode. So did they do something really, really impressive? Like when Shan was stealing idols and stuff, I was like, that was so fun. That was so great. That's really impressive. Or did they do something really terrible? Like, for instance, throw your number 1 ally under the bus in a heated moment. So that is another factor. So like somebody could be like long-term positioned at like a 7, short-term safety is at like a 7, but they did something really, really dumb in this episode. I'll jump down to like a 4 or 5 maybe. Okay. So things like that can definitely impact as we go. And also this early in the season, the ratings, as I've talked about, difficult to really judge at this point with so much to go and so little that we've seen. So I also like to just sort of rank them in order of who I think is doing the best on the tribe and who's doing the worst on the tribe, because that's kind of like between that and the ratings, we get enough, I think, discussion about the players. I also bring up the photos if you're watching the video of the players as we go, in case you need a visual aid. We are, still only 3 episodes in, and I do still sometimes forget the names of some of these people, so it can be helpful. So let's start with the Vati tribe. They went to tribal. There's definitely some stuff to talk about. I do think that usually the easiest one is that I do rate the person who is voted out. And
they're usually the worst, right?
And they are
And
usually
Jenny was
the worst.
worst in this episode.
So we usually
Easily.
start at the bottom because that's the easiest one to start from. But I think in this case, we should probably start from the top, which is actually also still pretty difficult. Who is the top player of the Vati tribe with Jenny leaving? And I think for me, it has to be Mike, right? Like Mike is in the best spot remaining, right?
I have Mike second.
Okay.
I do have High first. His position is better than he even knows, with Mike not having a vote. On the long-term stuff, you could drop him down a little bit, but on just pure episode performance, if we're really going to focus on
That's
that.
very true.
To the whole way that he was in that negotiation, obviously standing strong and firm, but with grace and kindness and apologizing to people. And like, he's wanted an ally for life in Lydia. And to wrestle back a 2 to 4 minority, and look, a lot of that is on other people. How much is like, he's probably maybe 30-40%, and we can put the rest on the mistakes of other people. But he does do that. His instincts are good. Whatever he was thinking about the votes, he couldn't possibly have known, and that's not on him. But his instincts are good, and he wrestles it back. And the way that he was in the negotiation, like, I would give him, well, it probably would be an 8, but you might have to drop him down on like long-term positioning. The thing that I would drop down for him and Lydia is that they did not have the numbers. They did not win that swing vote. Even when, like, again, this might be more on Chanel and Daniel, but like, even when it made all the sense in the world that, like, how much did they not want to work with them that they didn't, even when it made like all the sense in the world, especially when Daniel was saying like he wants it to be Lydia. So maybe that's more on Lydia, but like, they did not win the numbers. So maybe I make it about a 7. But I just think the way that he was in this episode was phenomenal, towards the end of the episode.
I think that's a good call, and I think also having talked through the numbers, because I hadn't realized that we had gotten rid of 4, which means we're at 14, and that there is definitely, I mean, there wasn't anything in the preview to indicate a swap, but that we definitely could be on the verge of a swap. I mean, if we don't swap at 14, it's not like we swap at 12, right?
I don't know that they're swapping. I mean, I watched the season before. It was season 41. They didn't swap. I just assume it's going to be the same season.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. If there's a swap coming, they almost always tell us, right? They're not going to surprise us with a swap.
I think that'd be a swap. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't.
Especially because the preview we saw something from each tribe, and the odds of going to all 3 tribes before we hit a mat is probably quite.
Yeah. I think that's right. So that definitely limits High's rating for me, because if Mike gets his vote back, that could be tricky. But at the same time, given everything that's happened with Daniel, it's not like Mike, Daniel, and Chanel are like probably going to be in lockstep, and they still would need to lose the challenge. And I think if High makes it to the merge with Lydia, I think he's in a position to bounce around. He did make that initial connection with Lindsay and Drea, so he could maybe use that. I don't hate his position there. I also do think his performance in this episode was pretty phenomenal. So I think, on second thought, I do think that High probably deserves the top spot here. And I would also go with a 7. If the swap was next episode, I'd give him like an 8. But
I'm between 7 and 8.
Yeah, the position is a little risky, I think.
Well, look, this isn't on him. But Chanel and Daniel have imploded so badly that even him thinking it's a 2 to 3 and it's actually a 2 to 2, what I envision is all of the 3 now singles, Mike and Daniel and Chanel, are going to be coming to this like locus of power that is the pair, and the strongest pair that is High and Lydia. And he would think that that's happening on what should be a 2 to 3, but they just can't get on the same page. But it's actually happening on a 2 to 2, where they don't have a numerical advantage and are even more incentivized to try and work with the strong 2. So I think they're going to have just a hell of a lot of power. And again, not all of that is due to what he was doing. Some of it is on mistakes, but he was also doing a lot. So maybe you should make it an 8. Should we make it an 8 based on that?
You can. I think.
I'm gonna make it an 8. I think an 8 is fair. Back to an 8. Yeah, I'm gonna go to an 8. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. So then I would have Mike next as mostly, I think, innocent in this situation. Yes, he has lost Jenny, which is a huge blow. But not as huge a blow as getting voted out and Chanel and Daniel. He also still has that idol that could be activated anytime now. I have to imagine it gets activated before the merge, considering
Potatoes have skin. I have skin. Am I a potato?
Right. Unless he chooses not to, in which case he'd be in charge of it and is probably making the right call for himself.
Yeah.
I would hope so. So I think that's fine for him in this spot. He's also, as I said, like the person least likely to be blamed for the situation with Hai and Lydia. They were at opposite ends in the first place. They were never relying on Mike.
Yeah.
And with, you know, Daniel and Chanel pointing fingers at each other, I think it would be very easy for Mike to grab either Daniel or Chanel and approach Hai and Lydia and go, look, I think, or I mean, he obviously doesn't need to grab somebody, but he doesn't have a vote, so he doesn't need to grab somebody. Grab one of them, go to Hai and Lydia, say, we need to reform this tribe. We need to go into the merge, loyal, or we're going to get eaten alive. Let's vote out this problem person, either Chanel or Daniel. Probably Daniel. I would imagine it is Daniel, considering his performance in the tribal, but you never know. So I think he's in an okay spot in that sense. But I do think losing his closest ally in Jenny is still a massive blow, and this was not a good episode for him. So for those reasons, I think I'm gonna go as low as a 4. I think it was a really bad blow for Mike here.
Okay, well, he lost Jenny, but that really wasn't his fault. So it's hard for me to.
It wasn't his fault, no, but position-wise, I think it was a big blow.
Yeah, because this is the big difference with like the Chizzy, which is basically just like we'll talk about it, but on episode performance. Position-wise, it hurts to lose Jenny. But we were talking about how, you know, Chanel and Daniel had been such apparent swings and there wasn't enough connectivity there for the other two sides to be like, wait, no, let's just vote out these people, like vote out the swings who have been so obvious with it, which is a move we've obviously seen before. This might make that happen. Like, for it to be so public and for them to implode, they might go to Mike and be like, well, let's, you know, be the top 3. He doesn't have a vote, which is hard, and they don't know that, which is also hard. But like, yeah, let's kind of be the top 3. We'll pull in the other one of them that we think is, you know, that we want to work with more, and we'll vote out one of Chanel and Daniel, and then we'll be the top 3. And the next time we'll vote out the other one of them. Like, let's actually go against this chaotic pair who have been, you know, riding us both around and also aren't even on the same page. So I think that he does have options. I thought it was a great individual episode from Mike. Like, other than losing Jenny, which is not his fault, he's way more onto Daniel than we thought. I really like the decision making that he's doing with the Beware Our Idol. The fact that choice is given to him and that he's working with it so well. I thought he was like stable and kind of trying to mediate a bit of the negotiation, which was a hard one. So on positioning, I'm not super sure, but on all of that, I'd probably give him a 7. Is that too high? It's like that's extreme, but
no,
I thought it was a very good episode.
People love it. People love it when there's a disparity. Well, you know, people theoretically love it. When they're actually playing the game, sometimes they hate it. But luckily, there's no game for Survivor yet.
Yeah, like there's no. Oh right, okay. So this is a whole thing. But there's no focus on him, you know, as well. Like, he doesn't come out of this as the headline at all. So he can hide behind that as well, which I think is good for his short-term game. And then he might get an idol and his vote back. So I don't hate the positioning for him either. And I thought that he was doing a lot of really good stuff. You know, obviously, he got the numbers as well, pulled over that pair, which is also a credit to him and Jenny. So I think that's good stuff.
I think that's all very, very fair. And in fact, I think again, you make good points. I think I would probably go with more of a 5 for Mike on second thought, because I think you're right in the sense that like he should be good on this. Like, he should be good on this tribe, considering the rift between Chanel and Daniel. And I do think that he seems to have enough of a personality where he can probably find a place at a merge and get back in. I am somebody that I think you should value your allies extremely highly. And I think losing a very locked in ally is always a very bad thing for you.
That did suck. Like, he kind of comes back with no one, because like, how much does he even want to work with Daniel and Chanel?
Exactly. And like, it's not like he can like move in with Hai and Lydia now either. Like, they're, you know, inseparable, I would imagine at this point.
I think he has options. Like, I don't think he has anything right now, but I think he has like a wealth of options. I do believe that. Even though he comes out of that tribal council having lost Jenny and having lost capital in that way, other people lost so much more that I actually think like he can cling on to something in the wreckage from that.
I think so. I think Mike's path to win includes like building like other tribes and structures need to be dismantled so that he can get in there and build something new. If he gets into a merge situation and, there's a locked in like majority alliance or majority tribe that's just kind of running the show. There's not really going to be any room for him to maneuver because he doesn't really have any solid numbers of his own heading into it. Or at least I would imagine.
Through no fault of his own has happened, like other than picking up Beware, which everyone would do and which happened last episode. So
it is very, very fair.
Tough position.
Yes. So then, I think you need to look at Jenny.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So I definitely do think Jenny's next, even though she went home.
I do. She did leave, but she is not the one that made the massive mistakes here.
She made no mistakes. Like that's why it's so painful. Is that it was Jenny of all people who was the stable person, who I gave a Chizzy point to and credited for choosing Protect, for doing that stable thing, who was just kind of like amidst the chaos of everyone else's kind of questionable decision making. She was like the strength in that. And I've seen a lot on Jenny getting twist screwed and about how the whole game is on advantages and whatever, and this is why the game is being ruined. She definitely got screwed. But I actually just want to push against that and say that it wasn't twist screwed to me, because actually the twist incentivizes Chanel to protect the vote, gives her an out in that, which she could have been done. What happened was Chanel, a person, not a twist, made the decision to give up her vote. And then Daniel decided to do everything that he did. It was mostly Chanel's decision-making in that moment. But for me, it's on people, it's on her allies, it's on their mistakes, it's on the gameplay, it's on High, realizing that, like, to me, and as we've talked about it, this was very much a people episode of Survivor. I know it didn't seem that way because it was structured in so much advantages, and that's what kind of led us there. But the reason we've been able to talk for 2 hours about the decision making was because there was so much there in just like pure gameplay. So Jenny suffers for that and for the decisions of others, but to me, she actually doesn't get twist screwed. She gets screwed by her allies and the wrong decisions kind of that they were making.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for like what was her amount of agency in like her downfall here, I think you could maybe say she kind of picked the wrong pair to go with. Turns out Chanel and Daniel were not the most reliable people to work with. Maybe she should have been trying to work with High and Lydia. But at the same time, I think you have to credit her for the fact that Chanel and Daniel tried so hard to stick their necks out to keep her around over Lydia. So I think that, could end up as a wash. I think you also have to say, like, I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she was informed of the plan, right? That they were trying to split the votes.
No, she didn't know anything about the advantage.
Did Chanel lie to Mike and Jenny?
So Chanel had not told, she had not told Mike and Jenny that she lost her vote.
So they could have pulled that move off and then not been ratted out by Mike because Mike didn't know the plan.
Yeah. So that's what she said. So she didn't know that. But again, it's like just like on the questionable decision from Chanel. Like, I don't know what more she can do. She has said in the exit interview that she campaigned more than what we saw. Again, what I think we saw didn't make a lot of sense, but I'm sure there's so much more there. So it's really, really, really hard to judge like what she's actually doing in the negotiation when so much of it is left on the cutting room floor. And then also like Chanel's not going to tell that, like that's not on her that she doesn't get that information. Like Chanel is not going to tell them that she's lost a vote because that's on her and she's still trying to pick her options within that. So it's hard to see what Jenny really did wrong here.
It is very difficult to find flaws here. So I think this might be one of the highest ratings I'll give to somebody that's voted out, but I think there's nothing really negative. I think it's a 5. No. I think it's like it's not a negative rating. It's just she's gone now.
I'm going to give her a 6 because I think there's actually a lot of positives there beyond being negative, but then I had to drop it down from like a 7 because she did go home. Why was she targeted over Mike is maybe a question. Was it a strength thing?
Yes, there you go. That's true.
Yeah. So that she does go home over Mike and there's something in that. There's something meaningful in that, but she did so little wrong. She did so little wrong. She's the only one who didn't lose her vote. She was given the opportunity to lose her vote and she didn't. And everyone else did. Every one of her other allies did something confusing, or what Mike did lose his vote as well. And then Daniel and Chanel, it's been said. So it's a hard one. And she didn't know that going into tribal council. And she's just saying the whole time, like, hope she doesn't lose her vote. And she did. So I would give it a 6.
Yeah. All right. So then it's between Chanel and Daniel. You might have gotten this impression already, but
Lydia.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I forgot about Lydia. I forgot this was a 6-person tribe. They still have so many people. Sorry, Lydia is definitely up next. Obviously survives this vote, but was the target for the other side. You know, I don't think she has a lot of agency or like perceived agency in the saving here. I think I would also give Lydia a 5 in this spot, just because you know, I just haven't seen enough from her in terms of like where her head is at. You know, she obviously trusted Chanel and Daniel. She's not the one to see through their plot, or at least that's what it seems. And, you know, if it had come down to her, that she might have, you know, unintentionally gotten herself voted out by not seeing through it. So I think you have to kind of penalize her for that. I mean, like, how do you even see that coming is ridiculous.
So hard.
But
like that's more credit to
I did.
Hype. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think overall, I still like Lydia. I'm hopeful for her, but I just don't see enough to move her off of a 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a 5 as well. It's that she didn't have the numbers. It's that she is the target. It's that so much on the saving comes down too high. Particularly, I didn't see so much happening in the negotiation that was on her. Like she does like placate Daniel when he's asking for it, which obviously just makes sense. But to me, it's a bit neutral. So I'm gonna give it a 5 because I do think that she and Hai have options, but I'm not sure how much she did to earn those options. But I think she'll use them well, and I think as a pair that they can. So I'm open to the possibility. So I think that for me is a 5.
All right. Then we've got Chanel and Daniel.
Yeah,
and for me,
hard one.
For me, I think I have to put Chanel above Daniel. And for a couple of reasons. I think strategically, Chanel led the charge on the worst strategic decisions. She decided to risk her vote, and she decided to try to split the votes here to not, go in the other direction. Now, Daniel co-signed everything. He went along with it.
Well, not risking the vote. that's all on Chanel. She's by herself in a tiny little booth. Yeah.
But he co-signed the other thing.
Yeah.
And he did what I thought was the worst, actual damage to your own individual game, which was throwing Chanel under the bus. That horrible performance in the negotiation. And I think that the results is, and this is only a guess on my part, but my guess is that the result is that Daniel has done more damage to his individual game than Chanel has. I feel like, again, if I'm in that tribal and I'm watching Daniel do this, and I have to choose to work, I have to choose either Chanel or Daniel. I'm going to choose Chanel every time, just because even though she just tried to trick me, so did Daniel. But when Daniel got caught, he just tried to rat out his closest ally. And Chanel was like, what are you talking about? And in addition to that, and this could be a bad thing, but a lot of the players on the tribe prior to tribal talked about Chanel being much more steady. Daniel is squirrely. And now that could be a bad thing in the sense that now we know that Chanel is not steady. She just tried to pull one over on us.
Yeah, but did we know Daniel was that squirrely? There's
exactly.
squirrely, and then there's that. That squirrel's on fire. Oh my God, save that squirrel. Oh my God.
So ultimately, I feel like Chanel is coming away in a better position here. I think that when stories are told of this moment, you tell the story of Daniel negotiating, and you say that Chanel tried to split her votes and that was a shady thing to do, sure, but that's that's all in the context of the game. Whereas when you're and then when it came to negotiate, Daniel was like, it's all Chanel's fault. That really stands out as out of the ordinary, right? So to me, that points to Daniel being in a worse spot, but that's guesswork. Who knows? Maybe they see him as a weaker link here, and because of that, they decide to use him to take out Chanel or Mike or something like that in a future vote if it comes to that. But for now, I have to put Chanel above Daniel. And then when it comes to the rating, it's difficult to in terms of, it reminds me of a Big Brother Canada situation recently where somebody just had a ton of equity and power and positioning, and they just trashed it all in the course of a very short amount of time. And that's really what it seems like they both did here. I think I have to give Chanel a 2. It's very bad this episode, and I would be the happiest person if she rebounds from this and is a 10 next episode and goes on to win the season, and I win the draft, and everyone's happy. But this episode was undeniably a bad episode, and for that reason, it has to be that low. The question then for me is, do I go to a 1 on Daniel? I really want to. But I don't know that he deserves the 1. It's a tough call for me. It was certainly one of the worst things I've seen. It's hard to imagine somebody tanking their game harder than what I saw Daniel do. So you've kind of inspired me to go more extreme. I'm going to give Daniel a 1.
Yeah. Oh my God. So much in that. I think that Daniel's poor negotiating and Chanel's decision at Shipwheel are equally iconically bad. Like, I think we will remember her going risk as much as Daniel saying, okay, let's first things first, I've got nothing. So to me, like, it is historically bad in that we've seen multiple people have similar decisions and make the right call, a call that they are pushed towards by the mechanism, do the same thing, take the out, like take the social capital. You're gaining something in that. It's like you get to keep your vote and maintain, but you actually also gain the social capital. Like there's so much that you can earn in that. Like we can actually both gain in this way. And it is such an obvious choice that we've seen Evie, for example, like make the clear choice and then like win in that vote. Same decisions were presented. So I think that's really bad at Shipwheel Island. I also think you have to wonder like who made High more nervous, or was it equal? Like we don't know. We see that Chanel kind of on the plan is putting people off. We see Daniel say, vocally call out that Chanel and Mike are like people who calm him down, which High seemed to, we don't know with editing, but High seemed to kind of react to. We see her saying Lydia in like a loud shout whisper. And then we also see Daniel like nodding a lot. So it's hard to know exactly what put High off the most. So maybe we'll just call that a wash. So then it becomes a couple of different things. It becomes who is going to be able to, what I think is like, they're going to be fighting over High and Lydia, who's going to win that battle. I think for me, I'd put slightly more, I'd give more credit to Daniel because he uses his position in being like the rock decider and being like, am I okay, High? Am I okay, Lydia? Who knows if that will come off, but he's at least trying to secure that. So I give him a little bit of a start in that race. But then I do think that Chanel could, I think that Chanel could rally from this, and I think could have rallied, like even with her bad decision making, it could have come out that she just kind of lost Jenny. Like that's what could have happened from this, and that's so unfortunate and did not need to happen, and they had so much equity, but that's all that we could have ended on here. Whereas for Daniel, I come out thinking, and she does lose her number 1 in Daniel, but that's on Daniel. And for Daniel, I come out thinking, can he still win this game? Like it's so public and his perception is so bad. And even in throwing Chanel under the bus, it's the way it makes him look. And I don't know that he can win anymore. Like I truly believe that maybe he lost the game in episode 3, which is, you know, he was doing so well. And we, you know, to take it that far. So I think that it all happened because of Chanel. Her bad decision making is what kind of tees it up. But then Daniel just like knocks it out of the park. So I'd probably put Chanel slightly higher than Daniel for that reason. Because I still think Chanel can win the game. Like I think this was terribly done, but I think there's a pathway there. Whereas for Daniel, I think he's got way further to climb and he has to make way more amends for some very, very publicly bad gameplay. Like at least Chanel did her thing in private. Like we know that she lost her vote, but like no one else was kind of there, wasn't as vocal. So I'd give them both 1s. I'm sorry. Like, I can't imagine how this could have gone worse. They came in the most ridiculous position and they lost it all so quickly. But I would put Chanel slightly higher than Daniel because I don't think that she tanked it as hard. But man, did they both tank it. And I feel like I've gotten a lot out. I feel good about it. But like, whoa, what? Guys, please. Oh, okay. We're good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's that. Not a great episode for me. Yeah, there were other tribes. So here's what I'm thinking. When it comes to the Ika tribe, we, as we mentioned, literally saw nothing from them at all in this episode. Not a single
secret
confessional.
Scene.
Not a single scene on the beach. Not a single secret scene. Absolutely nothing. So for me, I think what that means is that I have nothing more to add than what I said last week.
Yeah.
I think my ratings have to remain the same. But Shannon, you weren't here last week, so we can get your thoughts on the Ika tribe based on the last time we heard from them.
So it is basically just based on the last time, which is something I spoke about, obviously, in last week's podcast, but without ratings. I will give Tori a 3 for just kind of being consensus on the bottom until that, like, she's getting a lot of information, but until she kind of actively changes from being on the bottom. I'm going from bottom to top, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah, like until that actively changes, and she's not like the status quo target, I'm gonna have to give her a 3. I also don't know how much like Tori can win the game, just based on the way that she acts, which I think is hilarious and incredible, and Angelina upside. But Angelina did not get votes at the end, so that's my concern. I'll give Drea a 4, just for the way that I think that she's playing so hard. I did not like at all the moves that she was making last week. I thought she had a bad read on the people that she was pitching to. I thought she gave way too much info in that. And the whole game, I've been thinking that Drea's doing like 100 times too much. So, but I still see there's a pathway in that. And I feel like if anyone's going to just like wrestle their way to the end, it's going to be Drea. So I'll give her a 4, but I also could see the target coming back on her. I'll give Roxroy a 5. In that he like seems to at least have like 2 good allies in Romeo and Swathi, but he puts people off. And I think even in the preview, like we're seeing maybe more of these things, and we even see it in secret scenes, like just like his general kind of affect to everyone else is just not vibing. But at least, you know, he's not making the same kind of mistakes that someone like Drea is, or even Tori kind of did early on. Well, socially he is, but he's got a couple of like key options there in Romeo and Swathi, who I have at the top of the tribe. So those are the allies you want because they're powerful. And then I'll give Romeo a 6 just because it's harder for me to go higher when we're not seeing so much, but I think he's like really central in this tribe. And I'll give Swathi also just like a higher 6 in being like the most active player on the tribe. And also being, I think, very central and actually like making moves from the little that we've seen, but like with some actual capital. It's hard for me to go higher because we didn't see them this week. We don't really know where they stand. We need to kind of see how it goes, but I've tried to keep that a little bit more muted than like the 1s and the 9s, just because we haven't spent as much time with them. So I just kind of kept it a little bit confined, but those would be my ratings.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, maybe the one thing that could theoretically impact the Ika tribe as a whole is the, you know, the sort of destruction of Vati. What are the implications of that for a potential merge? It depends on when the merge happens and in what numbers. But it could be a good thing. The problem is it also could be a bad thing. If Vati is so destroyed and what is the Orange tribe? Whatever, the Orange tribe with Jonathan. If Taku comes in super solid with a core 4, and they're looking at like which side do we want to pick up, and they see a destroyed Vati, and they just pick up like Hai and Lydia, and that's all they need, or maybe Mike too, versus a slightly more unified Ika. It could be a bad thing for Ika that Vati destroyed itself, right? Or it could be a good thing because that's a 6-person tribe that's kind of off the board now, and maybe they can pick up numbers to take out the tighter group of the Taku tribe. So it's hard to really apply that yet, but it definitely has implications. It's just hard to know what yet.
Yeah, definitely the most interesting. The only progression we got from this tribe was that they became officially not the disaster tribe of the season. Not based on anything they did, but like Vati out-disastered them. And that is interesting because you wonder if they're going to kind of be chaotic, which they have been from the first vote onwards. Are they going to be chaotic like Tandang, who falls apart? Or are they going to be chaotic like Kasaya, who have to kind of keep it strong? They'll fight the whole time, but they'll stay strong because they can and because the power is there for them to do it. And if they want to go against like the strongest force in Taku but have more numbers and Vati are there to be picked up, like maybe they will do that and they'll just kind of bicker the whole time. So there's something there that I think it's good for them. I think anytime anyone who's not you falls apart, you take it. Like, okay, like we'll see, like other people are fighting, numbers are there to be taken. It's not as strong, like a majority or a plurality that might come against you. Pick up those numbers, like it's an opportunity for them.
Yeah.
So I think that this was good in general for Ika, the formerly blue tribe, now purple. Yeah, the tribe formerly known as blue.
All right. Well, let's move on to Taku, who won the immunity challenge. We're very safe this go around.
Yeah.
Only 4 people on this tribe. And really no major update. The only changes to the tribe, I would say, from this episode, from last episode, are, for me at least, are that Jonathan really stood out in that immunity challenge and got called out by Jeff. And Marianne got the beware advantage and publicly said her phrase, which means that likely a lot of people will know that she either has an idol or will have an idol, and also means that she might get an idol soon. So kind of pros and cons in that sense. Also that, again, that secret scene that implied that they're all very tight. Granted, it came from her.
No, Lindsay said something too in the actual episode.
You know what? You're
Lindsay
right.
Says
Lindsay did say in the episode too.
Our aim was to be a strong 4. So
yes.
I think that's the biggest thing for Marianne for me.
Yes. So yeah. So I think that not any indication that she wouldn't still be at the bottom if they lost, but a lot of emphasis on tribe strong. It's not like they want her gone or anything like that. They will likely do what they can to keep her protected, and keep her idol useful to them. So I think overall I'm a little bit higher on Marianne than I was before. I think Jonathan's challenge prowess is enough that it's not super likely that they do lose another challenge in the next couple of immunities. So I think I would go with something like a 5 for Marianne at this point. Just short-term danger is limiting her potential right now a lot. I also don't see the beware advantage as significantly positive enough because of the target it places on your back. We saw what happened last season because everyone will know that she has it. So for that reason, I think it's a 5, but I do think that she's on an upward trajectory here. For every tribal they get through without having to go to tribal, I think her position improves. And if she makes the merge with this group, I think she's in a really nice position as long as she doesn't get sniped out because of the idol.
I mean, I was just thinking the fact that we didn't have Jonathan pull a letter out of his bag that said, guess who likes you from Jeff Probst is just painful to me. We needed it. I would put Marianne the lowest. She's obviously at the bottom of the group. I'd give her a 5. Last week I was talking about, should the 3 try and push her to make her so paranoid to play a shot in the dark so that she can't use it against them at a possible future tribal council. And I think there was a lot of clarity delivered in why they wouldn't do that. They want to be a strong 4, and they're a stronger 4 than we had an indication of. So that's good for everyone, because for Marianne, she's more in than I thought. For the others, it looks like if they go to another tribal council, she'd be more easily blindsided than I thought. So maybe shot in the dark won't be, well, I mean, she doesn't have a vote. And then if she does, she has an idol. But whatever the situation is, I think that they should have some power there just on her kind of not knowing fully the dynamics, even if she does have her trinkets. And if she doesn't, well, that's done anyway. But I think that, telling people about the trinkets has merit. She's part of this type 4. She is in with them. She's close to having an idol. Thought she said the phrase pretty well. Is anyone questioning this? I don't know. Some people are aware that is a phrase to be said, so it does naturally spread as we see. But to be included as part of a strong 4, to be valued in that way, and to be making moves within that, it's a little dicey, but I think stronger than last week when she was to us seemingly one of 2 50-50 targets. So I would give her a 5 just based on how much is going on. Let's just even it out to a clear 5 for Marianne.
Yes. All right. So the next one is not a huge shift in terms of how I see them as a player, but kind of a big drop from where I had them before in the rankings of the tribe. I'm going to put Jonathan next.
Oh, how?
Yeah.
Oh, because Jeff was that vocal?
I really feel like it was such a strong moment. It's really going to stick in people's heads. And I felt like one of the reasons why I liked his position last week is because I thought he was doing a really good job of being yeah, I'm strong, but there are lots of different kinds of strength. And he was very chill in that way. But to see somebody beast a challenge like that, to have Jeff say, Jeff say that was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. To see the online discourse of, is that the most dominant challenge performance we've ever seen in 42 seasons of the show? That's the kind of thing that if you're out on that island, you're never going to forget that moment. it is always going to be in your head.
That's Jeff's fault. A lot of that is on Jeff.
It is on Jeff, but like it's you know, and because like I said, it's not like I'm gonna drop him a ton. Like I gave him a 7 last week. I'm gonna drop him down to a 6 this week. I just feel like the target on his back is a lot bigger now. But so it's not a significant drop, but I do think that it's kind of a good thing for people like Lindsay and Omer, who I think can definitely hide behind Jonathan much more so now as a shield. I really feel like, because the thing is, like, I was hoping that Jonathan would get to the merge, lose some of those individual immunities because they really can go anyway. Strength doesn't really matter in a lot of them, and people would kind of forget how strong he was in the pre-merge. I don't think anybody's going to forget. I think even if he loses every single individual immunity in last place, they're still going to be like, this guy's a huge, massive threat, and we need him out before we get to the end game.
Yeah, I mean, this is funny because we've seen so many alpha male type players try and counter that, like Jeremy Collins, like losing weight, trying to be like physically smaller because he knows how people see him. How do you counter the Jeff love? That's another strategy that the alpha males need to be thinking about, because it's going to shine a spotlight on you, and it's not your fault. I don't have Jonathan next. I've been so high on Jonathan, just being so different to what we thought in the preseason, and just having so much there, and having this core group protecting him, this like family that he's been carrying on his back. And I believe they all would so strongly. So if they're going to come from at the merge, there's going to be shields there. Maybe not shields because they're going to come for him, but there's going to be protection. There's going to be numbers. There's going to be persuasive power. Like this group, and I hope they're not a group that just gets like picked off because they're clearly the smallest and the strongest. But like this group do have a lot of power to get to a merge unscathed, because if it's a physical challenge, I don't know that they'll ever lose it. There will actually be puzzles, unlike Australian Survivor, but I think that they've got a good shot in general. And I just think that like, I have to credit where he is now. Like, I know there's like long-term positioning, but like he can't have done better other than Jeff Probst calling him out, which is at this point like impossible to mitigate. How could he have done better? Like, he's the center of this family. He's got individual relationships with, I think, he says how close he is to Marianne and to Lindsay and to Omar. So
he's also one of 2 votes on this tribe.
Yeah, one of 2 votes on the tribe. Yeah, so I think he could get the 4 through to merge. At that point, Omar probably might not have, you know, if he does, then he still wouldn't have his vote. And hopefully Marianne, will she get her vote back at merge? So hopefully they have enough power, because they're so clearly a target, because everyone else is such a mess and they're so core strong. But I would give him an 8, because I just have to commend what, you know, he's winning challenges, and then they need that right now. Like, he's the center of the tribe, he's the heart of the tribe, and I just don't see how he could have done any better at this point, other than be like, shh, Jeff, be cool. I don't know how he could have done much better to this point in the game.
All very fair points. For me, I have Lindsay next, also at a 6, and I think this is around where I had her before as well. I still just haven't seen enough from her to know exactly where she stands, what her long-term plans are, anything like that. But she seems, again, one of 2 votes on this tribe now moving forward. She should be pretty safe if they ever go to tribal. And I, again, like, I don't think they're going to go to tribal twice before the merge. I think once is the max at this point. And I would expect only 2 more tribals to begin with. Like, they're not going to merge past 12 when theoretically all 6 people from one tribe could have been eliminated, right? So if we only have 2 more tribals before merge max, then I think Lindsay's almost definitely fine. And I think that, you know, she now has Jonathan as a massive target in front of her, and Omer making a connection to Chanel, assuming Chanel gets there. You know, even though that relationship could theoretically be fractured, it's still a connection to make. Lindsay also has those the connection to Hai and Drea, so she's got options. Omer's got options. And you know, with Marianne having a potential idol that she's willing to probably share and use for the group if they do make that merge. You know, I think overall pretty good position. I just don't know enough about her game and what kind of player she is to really go too much higher from there.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is, like, is it more Jonathan and Omar? If they want to keep Marianne around because she will have an idol at the merge that could help their small little group, does Marianne leapfrog her or Omar? I do think Jonathan
There's no
is
choice.
never in danger.
Omer can't vote. Marianne can't vote. She's one of 2 votes. They can't get her out.
How do we get here in Modern Survivor? You're right. She's done. Well, so she votes for Marianne, and Jonathan votes for her, then at the revote, Jonathan will vote and Omar will non-vote and Jonathan will win.
That's fair. It's possible. And Marianne could also, like, the idol could activate, then she could get her vote and an extra vote back. It's definitely possible. But
yeah,
basically a lot of things would need to like happen to get Lindsay.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, yeah, and if she is on the bottom of that 3, and we honestly don't know, I just think that Jonathan's definitely at the top. Like, I think he's in no danger, and that's why I put him the highest.
Yeah,
but I think
I agree.
Lindsay's positioning is solid, so good. For the Taran's listeners, I've been loving the way that Lindsay goes about the game. Very happy with her on my draft team. She is super social, super open, just kind of like someone you can see gets along with people and is just kind of like seems like a really good like active listener, like all of these little skills that I could actually see her win. She does have the shield in Jonathan. She's got great relationships. She's got this great group on Taku. So I'll give her a 7. Maybe like in case anything goes haywire in like the short term future, but I think her positioning is great. And I would give her a 7. I'd put her slightly below Omar. He was doing a little more in this episode. I think he maybe is closer to Jonathan from what we've seen, at least in the edit. That's like the pair, but hard to fault anything Lindsay is doing as well. Same like Jonathan, like killing it, smashing it. Yeah,
and so for me, I'm gonna put Omar at the top of this tribe. Personally, I think I'm gonna give him. I'm tempted to drop him to a 6 just because he lost that vote, and that vote.
That's not his fault.
It's definitely not his fault, but it could be the thing that like loses this entire tribe, like their position at the merge, right? Like merge votes are usually pretty tight.
Yeah.
And not knowing if you even have a vote. I mean, he'll probably find out.
I think he'll find out.
Well, that's the thing. If Chanel is on his side, he'll find out. If Chanel's on the other side of that vote, she's probably not going to tell him. And so that could be tricky. But he did make that connection, and it's up to him whether or not he wants to be mad at Chanel for denying him the vote if he finds out. And I do think that this tribe is, again, pretty well positioned to do some things moving into the merge. And I think that again, I'm just like, he didn't make any boneheaded decisions here. I have a lot of faith in him as a player so far. So for me, Omar's going to get the top spot. I think he really benefits from Jonathan standing out so much in that immunity challenge.
Yeah, we actually got a question from listeners we got from Jeremy Hamilton, who wanted to know about what if Omar gets to the merge, doesn't know he's lost a vote, like the information imbalance, that Chanel could know that, and her allies or her tribe will know that based on just like the mechanism of her not having a vote. And he doesn't even know, and that whole tribe knows. I think he's going to find out before a merge. Like I could see her getting to the map the next day and being like, what, like looking at him like, what? And him being like, what? And like them just kind of like signaling to each other in this kind of panic. Like I assume he's finding out immediately on that. But I do think there's like good stuff here from Omar. Like I think they said it in the secret scene. They had, or maybe even in the episode, there was like a Matt connection. That's why Chanel was chosen, which is a credit to her. And that's why he kind of went with that and like tried to build on that relationship. So that's definitely a good thing and something we praised for like Deshawn and Evie last season, for example, but just had poorer results. But who can fault him when she's saying things like, I need my vote tonight. If we both can't get something, let's play it safe. Conventional wisdom and every example we've had up till now has shown that he should be okay to risk. It boggles the mind. I don't know what to say. Like I can't blame him on that. So I think that like he's with Marianne when she finds Beware. Like he seems to have these relationships, good positioning on his tribe. I put him just under Jonathan because I see Jonathan heart and soul of the tribe, top of the tribe, but Omar's in a great position for sure. And I gave him a 7, just slightly above Lindsay. But he also, it's again like this whole tribe, like with Jonathan and Lindsay and Omar, I think for all of them, it's hard to say how they could have done better than they have at this point in the game.
All right. Well, that's it. The Stockwatch. We did it.
But it's a crossover. So we're also going to do the Chizzy. Yes.
We're still going. It's a marathon podcast.
People were complaining. They're like, well, then I've lost the podcast from my feed. I'm like, but what if the podcast is really, really long? So
this is about twice the length of the previous Stockwatch podcast already.
Exactly. Like I was like, Taran, I know you're trying to do like shorter Stockwatch podcasts and you're watching like BB Can live feeds all the time. Like, let's do the crossover, but just know like I will not be doing a shorter podcast. I want you to know it's going to be exceptionally long. But this is where we do the Chizzy theme song. So take it away, Jacob Take a Weinstein and MC Color.
1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's getting kind of chizzy. 3, 2, 1.
That
Love
is
it.
the Chizzy theme song. I will explain the Chizzy briefly. I've been doing this on my own podcast because even people who are like newer to the podcast, I'll keep asking me what the Chizzy is. Basically, so the Chizzy was invented and named for the host of Survivor New Zealand, Matt Chisholm. That was the first season I covered. I wanted a fishy style award for the best player of the episode. And then my first guest, Henry from Australian Survivor, gave his award in a 3-2-1, which is how we judge sport here in Australia. So the umpires will give 3, 2, and 1 points to the best players. And at the end, that'll be tallied up and they'll win the like best and fairest award, which is like the award for the season. So every episode we give out that 3-2-1. Then we have charts that the great Randy Newpool puts together and we put out on Twitter every week. And I talk it through as well on the podcast. So I think the major difference with the Stockwatch, and something clearly I was like wrestling within my points, but the Stockwatch is rating, overall positioning, chance, all of that. The Chizzy is just 3 points for the best player of the episode, episodic, 2 points for the second best, and 1 point for the third best. And sometimes long-term positioning can play in. Like if a player is drawing dead and does something great, it still might impact on them because it's like, well, how much does that mean if you can't even win the game? Like how much like really are you playing with? But mostly it is, if you do something exceptional in this episode, you've won the Chizzy, and it's very episodic in that way. So there'll definitely be a cross connection. But Taran, do you want to give out your Chizzy points first for the episode, or should I?
I can go first. It's should we run all three, or are we gonna go with like 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1?
You give all your points in whatever order you want. This is still hotly debated of if we should go 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1. So you do whatever you think is more interesting.
Well, I feel like the obvious pick here, the obvious top performer of the episode, I would be surprised if he didn't get 3 from you as well, as High. You know, in terms of individual episode performance, it was phenomenal. Again, obviously, like not great that he's in this position, but he didn't get in this position in this episode. He got out of the position in this episode. So the fact that he's able to catch that something is going on, he's able to turn the vote into his favor. And, you know, it wasn't exactly difficult to out-negotiate Daniel, but he certainly knew what to do and he did it. And, you know, for what it's worth, Daniel's a lawyer. So, you know, he vastly out-negotiated a lawyer in the episode. So great job from High. I think definitely should get the 3 points here overall. In terms of like short-term episode performance, even though Jonathan dropped in my Stockwatch rating because of the long-term impact, I think that performance in the challenge was, as Jeff said, I mean, it was one of the most impressive things
Jeff's still thinking about it.
We've seen. Yeah, he's definitely still thinking about it. I mean, we've definitely seen some impressive things, but most of it's individual. Like, I mean, the guy was literally dragging people through the water because they couldn't move. I mean, it's ridiculous, the physical performance he showed. He was holding the ladder by himself as Lindsay climbed it to do the thing. I mean, it was ridiculous. He did something that entire tribes were not able to do collectively. The challenge needed to be stopped because they couldn't do it, and he did it by himself. And it would have been easier if it was just by himself. He also had to drag his whole tribe with him. So I got to give him 2 points for that. I mean, just a phenomenal challenge performance. Great stuff. And then the 1 point is the most difficult one because I do think that, you know, it's kind of a tricky thing to give out. I think I'd be between Omer and Marianne. Ultimately, I think you got to give it to Marianne for finding the advantage. I think that this is great for her. I think the solidification of the Taku tribe, the fact that they don't want her gone and that she now has this power, I think that's all very good for her. I think it's worth 1 point. I think Omer, you know, should be in the conversation as well. But and then I'll also like I'm not giving these people points, but I would also consider honestly Mike, because I do continue to agree with his decision to not say anything about his advantage, and I do like that choice strategically, but I think that he had too many other things not go well for him in this episode to give him a point.
Yeah, so we went about it a little differently, but definitely High. I'm giving 3 points to. wrestled back a 2-4. I know a lot was on other people, but he was doing enough there on instinct, on the way that he handled that negotiation. It was super solid. Definitely 3 points too high. I'm going to give 2 points to Mike. I thought it was a really good individual episode from Mike. He's much more onto Daniel than we thought. I like his decision with the beware advantage. I don't think a lot went wrong for what he did in this episode or at all. Like, he still got the numbers. And I thought it was a solid episode. And for that reason, I'm going to give 1 memorial point to Jenny. Not often that the person leaving gets a memorial point. But what did she do wrong? Like, so stable, it's so painful, so screwed over by this. And it's just really, really not her fault. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Jonathan for the challenge performance. But I do try, if there's enough there strategically, I try to give it for strategy over challenge strength because I'm a nerd. I like Harry Potter, I have to admit. So I usually try to go if there's enough there strategically. But it was an unbelievable challenge performance. So the charts, Omar on these 6 points. So on these 6 points, Omar is now not leading the Chizzy anymore. We're going to give 6 points to High. He's leading the charts. Then we have Omar at 5. Then we have Romeo at 4. Jonathan's now on 4. Drea's on 3. We've got a lot of people on 2. Mike's now on 2. Tori's on 2. Swati's on 2. Daniel last week got 2. Lindsay's on 2. Jenny leads with 2. And Marianne is on 1. So we have, I think, 12 of the 15 people who started this episode. 12 of them have Chizzy points, which Rob's fact checker said that in all of at least Australian and US Survivor, 9 last week was the biggest spread we've ever had 2 episodes in. He's going to have to keep updating for 12, 3 episodes in. I'm trying to work out on the fly who are the only people who don't have Chizzy points. Roxroy doesn't. Chanel, ironically, doesn't, because this was her big episode, and obviously we're not giving points for it. Can you filibuster while I work out who was the other person?
Well, I mean, I'm realizing something that's very pleasing to me. It's
Oh my gosh.
I'm the only Marianne point right now.
Yeah, and that's so
Sole
great. Thank you for
representative.
that. Thank you.
I feel very good about it.
Yeah, because wait, so Tori has, Drea has, Swathi has, Romeo has, so just rocks around that tribe.
Yep.
And then Chanel doesn't. This is not good podcasting.
Lydia?
Daniel does. Lydia's a thank you. Because we haven't seen enough of Lydia as well. So those are the only 3. That's wild to me. We're gonna have to get some because it's not even just because in Australian Survivor, obviously there's more people, so much more don't have points. Like for this percentage, it's now 12 of 14, and Jenny had as well. 12 of 15, 3 episodes in from the players who started the episode is wild. That is just very, very consistent. So follow me at Shannon Gates if you want to see the charts every week, because that's what we do. And Taran, we also do questions from the listeners, which we have largely answered, I will say. But we did get a question from Tom Lyons, who says, we hear the beware holder must say the phrase. This is something that's been debated. I want your take on it.
Yeah.
But obviously Mike doesn't. Thoughts on having a rule without consequences? A smart player can realize I don't have to do this and they can't do anything about it. Did the show allow for this on purpose, or was it an oversight? So this has been what's been debated, because it does say you must say the phrase, and clearly Mike is not saying it. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've seen the debate. You can probably tell by the fact that I haven't looked into it enough that, like, honestly, regardless of what it says, I don't know that I care all that much. So like, that's my ultimate answer. But I would ask, like, do we know the exact wording on the, like, does it say you must do this? And is, like, because basically, could you imply that you must do this if you want it activated?
Yeah.
Or is it like you are now like contractually obligated to say the phrase at every challenge? I would want the piece of paper in front of me. If it was very clear that you must do this regardless of anything else, then I think there's a case to be made. I'd still say personally, I don't really care, but I would say, kudos. I think you have a point. If it could be anywhere close to interpreted as you must do it if you want it activated, then I'd be like, all right, who cares?
Yeah, I think that it opens kind of talking about activating it. So you can then qualify with, like, you must do it to activate it. That's how I've been seeing it. I will say I hate the word must at all. The show making you do something is not something that I enjoy. Like, for example, in season 39, they weren't allowed to tell the other people that Rob and Sandra were there, and it was like, well, what's the penalty for that? Like, how are you forcing them into like what is really a production thing? Like, they must do this thing. So I don't like must, and I like giving them the choice, which we now see Mike have interesting strategy around. So anytime the players are given the option and can have agency in that, I like that much better. So I was assuming you must do it to activate it, and that would make sense to me. And if you wanted not to be activated, or you want to risk it, like, it's still a risk, because maybe the other person on Ika is waiting for Mike to say it, and like they both just wait forever and no one activates it. I like having the choice. I do think that there is a consequence if it was must. I don't think it's impossible to believe, because I think that if you didn't do it the next time, you still lose your vote to the merge, but it will just never be activated. And the other two who must do it, when they do it, only their idols count together when they both say it. That's what makes the idol live, and the other one's just been nullified in the way. So I think that production can police it. I think they're choosing not to. Again, it is better TV. I would go with it. It gives the choice. It still gives risk, as we're saying, but it becomes an interesting choice. I just want that to be clear to everyone. Like, does Marianne know it's not a directive, it's an option? That's all I care about. You know, like, I don't know, apparently last year, Evie at least thought that it was must. So have they changed it? I don't know. But I just hope that it's not going based on the assumptions of the players. I hope it's clear, and I hope that clarity is in it must be to activate it, but you don't have to do it. I think that would be the best case scenario.
I do think that they should be as clear as possible.
Yeah.
However, I also think that any good player out there should be constantly pushing the boundaries of what's allowed, and you should be either asking, you know, for permission or asking for forgiveness in terms of like anything that can be interpreted in any way, and that would be the first thing that I would do. Like, if I found a note, I would be like grilling the producer about like, okay, so this says this, does that mean I have to do this? Like, I'd be looking for any loophole possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you should be doing. You never just take it for face value and just assume, okay, it must be this then.
Yeah, I think like finding loopholes in the notes has been a big part as well of Australian Survivor, like in the last couple of weeks, and it really speaks to where we're at in 2022 Survivor. That like loopholes of how complicated all of these trinkets are is becoming like major plot points. Yeah, and like reading the rules closely is like such an important part of this. But I do think it's interesting for Beware, because it means like, I mean, they do get the idol now at the merge, like even if it's not said, but the must choice, again, it gives them agency, but it's really hard for the people on the other tribe, because that person just decided not to say it. Like firstly, you have to lose your vote. Secondly, you are relying on other people finding the idol. And now if it's a choice, which it obviously is, because that's what Mike's doing, you're also relying on them even choosing to say the phrase to try and activate something. So Beware, even when it's helpful or becoming more helpful, is very, very difficult. And that's why it says Beware, and it should have been probably underlined. But yeah.
I mean, I think a question to ask is, does this twist work now that it's out in the open? Can it work as an out in the open twist? I think in order to make it fair, in order to make it fair, you have to now like put on the front of it, if you decide to accept this idol, you will lose your vote until it's activated.
Yeah.
And basically, you have to publicly activate it if you want it to be active before the merge. And if you decide not to take it, then you run the risk of somebody else on your tribe taking it, because you can't go hide it somewhere. You need to put it back where it was. Right? Like, is that an interesting function to have moving forward, or should we get rid of it entirely? You know, I think it's a question worth asking.
I think we're done. How many more phrases do they have? Like, how many more? No, but I think a large part of the issue with Beware was that it was so unknowable, and I always felt like Beware advantage was a lie. You beware, but you barely advantage. You know, like that 50-52 words never felt even to me. So to do it in a future season where there is that knowledge would give more agency, and I would feel a lot better about it, because at least people kind of know what they're taking and can make more of that clear choice, especially like but the rules keep changing, so they might not know, like, oh, does it activate at the merge because that just swapped? Like, what is the must? We're still debating it. I just hope the production know and the players know. Like, that's always the thing that I go to, like, does everyone know what they're allowed to do? But I do agree with you, like, as much as you can push it and find loopholes, which players have been doing across the franchises, like, good on you for that. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting one now that people have this choice and are relying on the choices on other tribes, which makes it difficult, but very interesting for us as viewers. Yeah, that's all I got, Taran. I don't know. You're also hosting. Do you have more? No,
that's it. That's what we got. You know, we brought the smarts.
Now comes the smarts.
We did it.
Well, Taran, I'll be leaving a note in your bag for after this podcast about how much I enjoyed it. I don't want to tell all the listeners. I don't want to like up your threat level, but I just really enjoy. You'll see it in the note about how much I enjoyed podcasting with you for this.
Good. I'm glad. I'm excited for the note. I'm ready to go. I wanted to find a way to fit snow job in again.
She would come back and give us a snow job.
So that's
Awful.
I just did.
That's terrible. Yeah. Note job, maybe? No, it's not. We move on. This is usually where I ask my guest what you have going on in your, where people can follow you and stuff. But this is like, should you ask me who's the guest, who's the host? I'm confused about our role in this podcast.
Why don't we ask ourselves, hey, me, what am I up to? Oh, good question, me. I've got a podcast named after me called The Taran Show, where I talked with Tyson pretty recently. And then this week I spoke with Peridium, who makes a lot of Survivor and Big Brother YouTube videos. So that was a lot of fun. Check out The Taran Show. You can also, of course, find all the Big Brother coverage going on. I'm also live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. This is something that I do that a lot of people, including myself, enjoy, which is that I stream during the episodes as they air. So I am watching live with everyone. There's a huge crowd, essentially, that you get to watch with, chat with as you watch the episode. It's a good time. So come hang out as I do that. And then we also, play some games over there. Shannon has joined us before with some Among Us / Goose Goose Duck style games. And I'll also be streaming about the Oscars tomorrow, if depending on what day you're listening to this. But tomorrow is Saturday for me right now. And I'll be chatting with Melissa and Lita about the Oscar movies, stuff like that. And find me on Twitter as well, at Armstrong Taran. That's what I got.
Yeah. Well, me, what do I have going on? I always feel like it's a lot, but then not when I talk to you, because Big Brother makes Australian Survivor look like US Survivor. But for Australian Survivor, there is still a lot going on. Recapping that every week on RHAP. Last week I had Tessa O'Halloran, and next week I'll have Ricard. So bringing in some of that US Survivor love into Australian Survivor. Got exits every week with the eliminated players. I also talk about it on Talking Tribal on Channel 10, also on podcast form. It's on YouTube, so it's not just 10 players. So you can find it anywhere if you want to check that out. Next week for Survivor Global, for US Survivor, when I go back to not the crossover, I will have Phil from Australian Survivor, Chili Philly. So that should be really fun. I'm also on Memo, and I really appreciate everyone who's been asking for some of those personalized videos. Been having a lot of fun with that. And I'm writing articles for 10 Play about Survivor. So it's also a lot around US Survivor. I did like moves basically you have to see in your lifetime, moves you have to see before you die for US Survivor, or like season recommendations, and also some stuff around international. And hopefully people want to check out some more international, some of Taran's listeners after this podcast, at least the first 2 episodes and then some of Survivor South Africa season 6, I should hope, because it's really something to behold. So hope that you guys get a hold of that and follow the coverage if you do. But follow me at Jenna Gates, subscribe to the International Survivor HAPUPS feed. And yeah, I hope that this crossover worked enough that people don't prefer us to each other of our listeners, but also kind of want to maybe jump into some other pools, because if they're listening to either of our podcasts, there's definitely a strategic mindset, I would think. And I think that probably follows on to the other podcasts as well.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they prefer the combination, right? Like that's the ultimate. This is the Avengers of of podcasts. But we're gonna continue our solo movies as we go, and hopefully they'll continue to be the only movies that make any money in theaters nowadays. I got lost in that metaphor, but
don't make a Batman reference, Taran. It's not your fault. You don't know this. I know you went Avengers, you went Marvel, but like most of Australian Survivor at the moment is Batman references. So I just need, now I'm talking about Batman again. Most of my podcasting is about Batman. Like I just need to get away from it.
Wow. Well, that's what we got. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you're from Shannon and you enjoyed the Stockwatch aspect, and you won't mind a leaner podcast in the future, come check out the Survivor Stockwatch next week. And if this is your first time hearing Shannon's content, clearly it's great. So add that to your queue, and we'll all win.
Yeah, it's all on the Survivor feed. We should also say, if you've enjoyed this dynamic and have not heard it before, we have a lot of Survivor podcasts. We talked about alliance management. We talked about plurality votes. What else? We talked about flipping, I think. Or was that part of alliance
I think
management?
so.
We talked a lot of strategy. So just like, game theory type of strategy where we can. So it's very on brand. We like everyone understands, I think, what we're doing. But Taran, the Jetsons to my Flintstones. I'm glad that this was so fun. I'll give my closer, then you give your closer, and then we're gonna have to work out what we're doing with the music. We're gonna have to work it out. But thank you so much, Taran, for the crossover spectacular. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to Scott St. Pierre behind the scenes, and I will see you hopefully next week.
All right. Well, I don't have even that much. I just say that thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.